The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, sending Dom Perignon across Italian leather shoes worth more than most people's cars. But I didn't flinch. I kept my eyes locked on Harold Blackwood as he stood at the head of his mahogany dining table, face flushed with expensive wine and cheaper prejudice. "My daughter deserves better than trash," he announced to the room full of his country club friends, business associates, and horrified family members. Street trash dressed in a borrowed suit, pretending to belong in our world. The silence that followed was deafening. 23 pairs of eyes swiveled between Harold and me, waiting to see if the nobody dating the princess would dare respond to the king. I carefully folded my napkin, the cloth probably cost more than my first apartment's monthly rent, and placed it beside my untouched plate of $40 salmon. "Thank you for dinner, Mr. Blackwood," I said, standing slowly, "and thank you for finally being honest about how you feel." Sophia grabbed my hand. "Adrian, don't." I squeezed her fingers gently, then let go. "It's fine, love, your father's right. I should know my place." The smirk on Harold's face was worth capturing, that self-satisfied expression of a man who thought he'd won, who believed he'd finally driven away the street rat who dared to touch his precious daughter. If only he knew. I walked out of that dining room with my head high, past the Monet in the hallway, past the servants who avoided eye contact, past the Bentley in the driveway that Harold had made sure to mention cost more than I'd make in 5 years. Sophia caught up to me at my car, my sensible Honda that Harold had sneered at when I'd pulled up. "I'm so sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I had no idea he'd." "Shoo." I pulled her close, inhaling the scent of her perfume mixed with the salt of her tears. "This isn't your fault. I'll talk to him, make him apologize." "No." I tucked a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. "No more apologizing for him. No more making excuses. He said what he's been thinking for the past year. At least now we know where we stand. Adrian, please, don't let him ruin us." I kissed her forehead. "He can't ruin what's real. Soph, I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" She nodded reluctantly, and I drove away from the Blackwood estate, watching in my rearview mirror as the mansion grew smaller, its lights twinkling like stars I'd supposedly never reach. My phone started buzzing before I even hit the main road. I ignored it, knowing it was probably Sophia's mother, Victoria, trying to smooth things over, or maybe her brother James, offering awkward solidarity. They weren't bad people, just weak ones, too afraid of Harold to ever stand up to him. But I had more important calls to make. I voice-dialed my assistant as I merged onto the highway. "Catherine, I know it's late. Mr. Cross, is everything all right?" Catherine had been with me for 6 years. Since before the world knew who Adrian Cross really was, she could read my moods like a book. "Cancel the Blackwood Industries merger." Silence. Then, "Sir, we're supposed to sign papers on Monday. The due diligence is complete. Financing is secured." "I'm aware. Kill it. The termination fees alone will be." "I don't care about the fees. Send the notice to their legal team tonight. Cite irreconcilable differences in corporate culture and vision." "Adrian." Catherine dropped the formalities, which she only did when she thought I was making a mistake. "This is a $2 billion deal, whatever happened at dinner." He called me trash, Cat, in front of a room full of people, made it clear that someone like me will never be good enough for his family or, by extension, his business. That bastard. Catherine's fingers were already flying across her keyboard. I could hear it through the phone. "I'll have legal draw up the termination papers within the hour. Want me to leak it to the financial press?" "Not yet. Let him wake up to the official notice first. We'll let the media have it by noon tomorrow." "With pleasure, sir. Anything else?" I thought for a moment. "Yes. Set up a meeting with Pinnacle Corp for Monday. If Blackwood Industries won't sell, maybe their biggest competitor will." Catherine laughed. "You're going to buy his rival instead?" "Why not? Trash has to stick together, right?" I hung up and drove the rest of the way to my penthouse in silence. The city lights blurred past, each one a reminder of how far I'd come from the kid who'd slept in shelters and survived on free school lunches. Harold Blackwood thought he knew me, thought he'd researched enough to understand what kind of man was dating his daughter. He knew I'd grown up poor, that I'd started working at 14, that I'd put myself through community college and then university through sheer determination and an unhealthy amount of caffeine. What he didn't know was that the scrappy kid he looked down on had built a corporate empire while staying in the shadows, that Cross Technologies, the company his own firm was desperately trying to merge with to stay relevant in the tech age, was mine, that I'd spent the last decade acquiring patents, poaching talent, and strategically positioning myself to become the kingmaker in our industry. He didn't know because I'd kept it quiet, using holding companies and trusted executives as the face of my operations. I'd learned early that real power came from being underestimated, from letting blowhards like Harold think they held all the cards. My phone rang as I pulled into my building's garage. Harold CFO, Martin Webb. That was faster than expected. Adrian, it's Martin. I'm sorry to call so late, but we just received a notice from Cross Technologies terminating the merger agreement. There must be some mistake. No mistake, Martin. But we're set to sign Monday. The board has already approved. Shareholders are expecting. Then the board should have thought about that before their CEO publicly humiliated me at dinner tonight. Silence. Then, quietly, what did Harold do? Ask him yourself. I'm sure he'll give you his version. Good night, Martin. I hung up and headed to my penthouse, pouring myself a scotch and settling onto the balcony to watch the city sleep. Somewhere out there, Harold Blackwood was about to have his evening ruined. I wondered if he'd make the connection immediately or if it would take him a while to realize that the trash he'd dismissed controlled the one thing his company needed to survive the next fiscal year. My phone buzzed. Sophia calling. I let it go to voicemail, not trusting myself to separate my anger at her father from my love for her. She didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire, but some battles couldn't be avoided. By morning, my phone had logged 47 missed calls. Harold had tried reaching me 6 times himself, which must have been killing him. The great Harold Blackwood, reduced to repeatedly calling someone he'd declared trash. I was reviewing quarterly reports over breakfast when Catherine called. The financial press got wind of the terminated merger. Bloomberg wants a statement. Tell them Cross Technologies has decided to explore other opportunities that better align with our values and vision for the future. Vague and devastating. I love it. She paused. Also, Harold Blackwood is in the lobby. I nearly spit out my coffee. He's here? Showed up 20 minutes ago. Security won't let him up without your approval, but he's making quite a scene. Should I have him removed? No. I set down my mug, thinking, send him up, but make him wait in the conference room for, let's say 30 minutes. I'm finishing breakfast. You're evil. I'll prep conference room C, the one with the uncomfortable chairs. 45 minutes later, I walked into the conference room to find Harold Blackwood looking significantly less imposing than he had the night before. His usual perfect hair was disheveled, his tie askew. The man who'd lorded over dinner like a king now looked like what he was, a desperate CEO watching his company's future evaporate. Adrian. He stood when I entered, and I could see how much it cost him. Thank you for seeing me. I sat down without offering him a handshake. You have 5 minutes. He swallowed his pride like broken glass. I apologize for last night. My words were inappropriate. Inappropriate? I laughed. You called me trash in front of your entire social circle. You humiliated me in your own home, at your own table, while I was there as your guest and your daughter's fiancé. I was drunk. No. I cut him off. You were honest. Drunk words, sober thoughts. You thought I was beneath you from the moment Sophia introduced us. Last night you just finally said it out loud. Harold's jaw tightened. Even now, even desperate, he couldn't fully hide his disdain. What do you want? An apology? You have it. A public statement? I'll make one. Just, the merger needs to happen. You know it does. Why? Excuse me? Why does it need to happen? Explain to me why I should do business with someone who fundamentally disrespects me. Harold's face flushed. Because it's business. It's not personal. Everything is personal when you make it personal. I stood up. You researched me, right? Dug into my background? Found out about the foster homes, the free lunch programs, the night shifts at warehouses to pay for textbooks? He nodded reluctantly. But you stopped there. You saw where I came from and assumed that defined me. You never looked at where I was going. I walked to the window, gesturing at the city below. Do you know why Cross Technologies is successful, Harold? Because you have good products. Because I remember being hungry. Because I remember being dismissed, overlooked, underestimated. Every person we hire, every deal we make, every product we develop, I ask myself if we're creating opportunity or just protecting privilege. I turned back to him. Your company represents everything I built mine to fight against. Old money protecting old ideas, keeping the door closed to anyone who didn't inherit their seat at the table. That's not. Isn't it? Name one person on your board who didn't go to an Ivy League school. One executive who grew up below the poverty line. One senior manager who had to work 3 jobs to put themselves through community college. His silence was answer enough. The merger is dead, Harold. Not because you insulted me, but because you showed me who you really are. And more importantly, you showed me who your company really is. This will destroy us, he said quietly. Without this merger, Blackwood Industries won't survive the next 2 years. Then maybe it shouldn't. I headed for the door. Maybe it's time for the old guard to make way for companies that judge people by their potential, not their pedigree. Wait. He stood up so fast his chair tipped over. What about Sophia? You're going to destroy her father's company? Her inheritance? I paused at the door. Sophia is brilliant, talented, and capable. She doesn't need to inherit success, she can build her own. That's the difference between us, Harold. You see inheritance as destiny. I see it as a crutch. She'll never forgive you. Maybe not. But at least she'll know I have principles that can't be bought or intimidated away. Can you say the same? I left him there and went back to my office. Catherine was waiting with a stack of messages and a knowing look. Pinnacle Corp wants to meet Monday morning. They're very interested in discussing an acquisition. Good. Make sure Harold hears about it by this afternoon. Already arranged for the information to leak. She paused. Sophia is in your private office. My heart skipped. How long? About an hour. I brought her coffee and tissues. I found Sophia curled up in my desk chair, eyes red but dry. She looked up when I entered, and I saw her father's strength but her mother's kindness in her face. Hi, she said softly. Hi. I heard what you told him. Catherine let me watch on the conference room feed. I sat on the edge of my desk. And I think. She stood up, coming to stand between my knees. I think I've been a coward. Letting him treat you that way, making excuses, hoping it would get better. Soph. No, let me finish. She took my hands. I've spent my whole life benefiting from his prejudices without challenging them. Last night, watching him, I was ashamed. Not of you. Of him. Of myself for not standing up to him sooner. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you'll have me, I want to build something new. With you. Without my family's money or connections or conditional approval. I pulled her close. Are you sure? He's right about one thing, walking away from that inheritance is no small thing. She laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound I'd heard in days. Adrian Cross, you just terminated a $2 billion merger because my father disrespected you. I think we'll figure out the money part. I love you, I said, meaning it more than ever. I love you too. Even if you did just declare corporate war on my father. Especially because I declared corporate war on your father? Especially because of that, she agreed, kissing me. My phone buzzed. Catherine again. Sir, Harold Blackwood is holding an emergency board meeting. Our sources say they're discussing reaching out to you directly, over his head. I put the phone on speaker. Tell them Cross Technologies might be willing to discuss a merger with Blackwood Industries under new leadership. Emphasis on new. Sophia's eyes widened. You're going to oust my father from his own company? I'm going to give the board a choice, evolve or perish. What they do with that choice is up to them. She thought about it for a moment, then nodded. He won't go quietly. I wouldn't expect him to. This is going to get ugly. Probably. My mother will cry. Definitely. My brother will write another terrible song about family drama. God help us all. She smiled, and it was sharp and beautiful and a little bit dangerous. So when do we start? I smiled back. How about now? And that's how the nobody dating the princess became the king who toppled the kingdom. Not with a sword or an army, but with a simple truth: respect isn't inherited. It's earned. And those who refuse to give it when it's earned? Well, they learn the hard way that sometimes the trash takes itself out, and takes everything else with it. By the following Monday, Harold Blackwood was no longer CEO of Blackwood Industries. By Tuesday, Cross Technologies had announced a merger with the newly restructured company. By Wednesday, Sophia had accepted a position as our new head of strategic development, turning down her father's offer to fund a rival venture out of spite. And by Thursday? Well, by Thursday, Harold Blackwood had learned the most expensive lesson of his life. Never call someone trash unless you're prepared to be thrown out with it.
The glass elevator at Morgan Technologies rose smoothly through the gleaming tower, each floor marking another step toward a moment I'd planned for 2 years. I adjusted my simple gray blazer, purchased from a department store, nothing like the designer suits surrounding me in this corporate cathedral of steel and glass. Going up, a man in an impeccable navy suit stepped in, barely glancing at me. I nodded, letting him assume I was just another low-level employee. If he only knew. My phone buzzed, another text from Marcus, my brother. "Where are you? Remember what we discussed. Stay in the back. Don't draw attention. This is my night." I didn't respond. Instead, I watched the floor numbers climb. 38, 39, 40. The top floor boardroom awaited, where Morgan Technologies would be announcing their new senior vice president of operations. My brother Marcus, the golden child, was about to receive the promotion he'd been bragging about for weeks. Growing up, Marcus had always been our parents' pride and joy. While I'd buried myself in business books and studied late into the night, he charmed his way through life with an easy smile and calculated charisma. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. When I got accepted to business school, Marcus told everyone I was hiding in academia, while he was making real moves in the corporate world. When I completed my MBA, he dismissed it as just paper compared to his real-world experience. The elevator dinged at the 45th floor. As I stepped out, memories of last month's family dinner surfaced. Sarah's still playing at being a professor, Marcus had announced, cutting into his steak. While I'm about to become the youngest SVP in Morgan Technologies history. Mom beamed at him. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." Some people, she glanced my way, just aren't cut out for the corporate world. Dad nodded sagely. Academic life suits Sarah. Safe, predictable. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real business. I'd said nothing, just smiled and ate my dinner. Let them think what they wanted. They had no idea that while I was hiding in academia, I'd been building something much bigger. Now, walking through the sleek hallways of Morgan Technologies, I felt the weight of the documents in my briefcase. 2 years of careful planning, strategic investments, and quiet negotiations had led to this moment. The boardroom doors loomed ahead. Through the glass, I could see Marcus holding court, his perfectly tailored suit and practiced smile radiating confidence. Our parents sat in the front row, practically glowing with pride. Marcus spotted me and frowned, quickly making his way over. "I told you to stay in the back," he hissed. "This is my moment. Don't embarrass me by trying to network or whatever you're planning." "Don't worry," I said quietly. "I'm not here to steal your spotlight." He eyed my simple outfit with disdain. "Good. Just try to look professional at least, and don't mention we're related." As he walked away, I checked my watch. Right on schedule, Miranda Chen, the CEO of Morgan Technologies, would be arriving to make the announcement. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd met with Miranda many times over the past year, but not about his promotion. The room quieted as Miranda strode in, commanding attention without effort. She took her place at the podium, shuffling her notes with practiced precision. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "thank you for joining us today. we're here to announce some significant changes at Morgan Technologies. Marcus straightened his tie, ready for his moment. But before we discuss any promotions, Miranda continued, I have an important announcement. As many of you know, I've been searching for the right person to take Morgan Technologies into the future. Someone with vision, integrity, and a deep understanding of where this industry is heading. She paused, scanning the room. Marcus's smile widened. That search led me to someone who impressed me not just with their business acumen, but with their innovative approach to technology and leadership. Someone who quietly built an investment portfolio that includes controlling interests in 3 of our major competitors. Marcus's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't part of his script. Over the past year, this person has been systematically acquiring shares in Morgan Technologies through various investment vehicles. As of this morning, they've succeeded in purchasing a controlling interest in our company. The room broke into confused murmurs. Marcus's face had gone pale. Ladies and gentlemen, Miranda said, please join me in welcoming the new owner and CEO of Morgan Technologies. She turned and extended her hand toward me, Dr. Sarah Mitchell. The silence was absolute as I walked to the podium. Marcus stumbled backward, his carefully planned speech falling from nerveless fingers. In the front row, our parents sat frozen, their expressions a mixture of shock and disbelief. Thank you, Miranda, I said, taking my place at the podium. The documents in my briefcase would wait. Right now, I had a company to address, and a lifetime of underestimation to correct. The boardroom remained frozen in shocked silence as I stood at the podium. Miranda Chen stepped aside, a slight smile playing at her lips. She had kept our secret well, understanding exactly why this moment needed to happen exactly this way. Before we continue, I said, my voice steady, I believe congratulations are in order. Marcus, would you join me up here? My brother's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. He stood rooted to his spot, designer suit suddenly seeming too tight at the collar. Our parents remained motionless in their front row seats, mother's perfectly manicured hands gripping her purse so tightly our knuckles had gone white. Marcus, I repeated, letting authority fill my voice. Please. He moved woodenly toward the podium, each step looking like it physically pained him. The whispers had started now, rippling through the crowd as people connected the dots between our shared last name. As you all know, I continued, Marcus was to be announced as your new Senior Vice President of Operations today. I paused, letting the tension build. That announcement will still be going forward, though with some adjustments. Marcus's head snapped up, hope and confusion warring on his face. Over the past year, I've had the opportunity to review everyone's performance records, including Marcus's. While his sales numbers are impressive, there have been some concerning patterns in his management style and strategic decisions. I opened my briefcase and removed a folder, watching Marcus's eyes track my movements. Specifically, the Harrison account proposal from last quarter. I held up a document, the one where you took credit for Jennifer Torres's work while she was on maternity leave. The color drained from Marcus's face. In the audience, a young woman in a charcoal suit sat out straighter. Or the Stevens Technology merger, I continued, extracting another file, where you conveniently failed to mention the massive pension liability that would come with the acquisition, the liability you discovered during due diligence but chose to hide. That's taken out of context, Marcus stammered, finding his voice. You don't understand how business works in the real world. Sometimes you have to. Make morally questionable decisions to get ahead. I finished for him. Steal credit from your subordinates. Hide critical information from the board. Our father stood up suddenly. Now see here, he blustered, his face reddening. You can't just walk in here and start making accusations. Marcus has worked his way up through a combination of charm, manipulation, and taking credit for others' work. I cut in. Yes, I know exactly how he's worked his way up. I've spent the last year reviewing every decision, every proposal, every partnership he's been involved with. I turned to address the room at large. Morgan Technologies has an incredible team of dedicated, innovative professionals. People who work hard, support each other, and operate with integrity. Starting today, those are the people who will be recognized and rewarded. My eyes found Jennifer Torres in the crowd. Ms. Torres, I'd like to meet with you tomorrow morning to discuss your actual contributions to the Harrison Project and your thoughts on leading the new digital transformation initiative. Jennifer sat up straighter, a slow smile spreading across her face as Marcus seemed to shrink beside me. This is ridiculous. Our mother's voice cut through the room as she stood, designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Sarah, you've always been jealous of your brother's success. This little power play of yours. Mrs. Mitchell, Miranda interrupted smoothly. Perhaps we should continue this family discussion privately. The board and I have some organizational announcements to make. I nodded. My office, I said, indicating the large corner office that had been prepared over the past week. Now, as our parents and Marcus followed me into the office, I could hear Miranda beginning to outline the company's new direction to the assembled employees. The heavy door clicked shut behind us, muffling the sound. Have you lost your mind? Marcus exploded the moment we were alone. You can't just walk in here and... I can and I did. I replied calmly, taking my seat behind the desk. I own 51% of Morgan Technologies now. Every decision, every promotion, every strategic move goes through me. How? Our father demanded. Where did you get that kind of money? This company is worth billions. I leaned back in my chair. Remember that silly little consulting firm I started during my hiding in academia phase? Turns out there's good money in helping tech companies optimize their operations and identify acquisition targets. I smiled. Very good money, when you do it right. But you live in that tiny apartment. Our mother protested. You drive a used car. You shop at department stores. Because I was investing everything into building something bigger, I opened my laptop. Now let's discuss Marcus's new position. New position? Marcus sputtered. I'm supposed to be senior vice president. You were, I agreed. But given the pattern of ethical violations I've uncovered, that's no longer appropriate. I pulled up a document on my screen. Instead, you'll be taking a lateral move to our new Minneapolis office as a regional sales manager. The blood drained from Marcus's face. Minneapolis? Sales manager? You can't do this to me. Minneapolis is lovely this time of year, I said mildly. Though I hear the winters are quite cold, you might want to invest in a good coat. Department stores have some excellent options. Our father slammed his hand on my desk. This is outrageous. We'll fight this. The board won't stand for. The board, I cut in, has already approved all personnel changes. They've known about this transition for weeks. Only the three of you were kept in the dark. I stood up, straightening my simple blazer. You have until the end of the day to clear out your office, Marcus. Your flight to Minneapolis leaves tomorrow morning. First class, of course. I'm not completely heartless. And if I refuse, Marcus challenged, though his voice shook slightly. Then you can explain to potential employers why you were terminated for ethical violations. Your choice. I checked my watch. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. As they filed out of my office, shoulders slumped in defeat, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. The simple gray blazer didn't look so plain anymore. It looked exactly like what it was, the outfit of someone who had worked for everything she had, who had earned every step up the ladder. But my day wasn't done yet. Not even close. Because what my family didn't know was that Morgan Technologies was just the beginning. The real changes, the ones that would reshape not just our family dynamic, but the entire industry, were still to come. I picked up my phone and dialed a familiar number. Everything's in place, I said when the line connected. Time for Phase 2. 3 months after taking control of Morgan Technologies, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports. The Minneapolis weather update on my screen showed heavy snow. I wondered if Marcus had bought that winter coat yet. A soft knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, already knowing who it would be. Jennifer Torres entered, carrying a tablet and looking considerably more confident than she had 3 months ago. As the new head of digital transformation, she'd already implemented changes that had increased efficiency by 30%. "The Stevens technology audit is complete," she reported, taking a seat. "You were right about the pension liability being just the tip of the iceberg. We've uncovered at least a dozen other issues Marcus tried to hide." I nodded, unsurprised. "Send me the full report. And Jennifer, good work." She smiled, the smile of someone who was finally being recognized for their talents. "There's something else. Your parents are in the lobby." I glanced at my calendar, though I already knew it was empty. "Send them up." While waiting, I opened my desk drawer and removed a thick manila envelope. Inside were documents I'd been preparing for weeks, ever since Phase 2 had begun. My parents entered without knocking. Mom looked thinner, her designer outfit from last season showing signs of wear. Dad's golf tan had faded, and his shoulders stooped slightly. "Sarah," Mom started, her voice carrying forced brightness, "we've been trying to reach you." "I've been busy," I replied coolly. "Running a company takes considerable time. Please sit." They settled into the chairs across from my desk, looking uncomfortable. The silence stretched. "It's about Marcus," Dad finally said. "He's struggling in Minneapolis. His performance reports reflect that." I agreed. "His sales numbers are well below target. He's not used to the cold," Mom interjected quickly. "And that tiny apartment. Nothing like his condo here. Couldn't you find something closer? Maybe a position in the Chicago office?" I leaned back in my chair. "Has Marcus mentioned why his numbers are down?" They exchanged glances. Dad cleared his throat. "He says the clients there are different, more demanding." "They're not different," I said. "They just expect actual results, not empty promises and stolen ideas. Marcus can't coast on charm there because I specifically instructed the regional director to verify all his work." That's harassment," Dad sputtered. "That's accountability," I corrected. "Something Marcus has never had to face before." I opened the manila envelope. "Which brings me to why I've been trying to reach you both as well." Their eyes fixed on the documents I spread across my desk. Property records, bank statements, investment portfolios. When I was reviewing Marcus's financial records, I found some interesting transactions. I continued. "Large transfers from your accounts to his, dating back 5 years. Money that came from mortgaging your house. Twice. Mom's hand flew to her throat. Dad's face paled. He said it was for investments. Mom whispered, special opportunities. He lost it all, I said quietly. High-risk trades, failed startups, gambling. The second mortgage payment is due next week. You can't cover it, can you? Dad's shoulders slumped completely. We were hoping that I would bail you out, I finished. Like you bailed him out, over and over, while telling me I didn't understand real business. Tears welled in Mom's eyes. Sarah, please. We'll lose the house. I pulled out another document. This is a proposal. Morgan Technologies will purchase your house at market value, clearing both mortgages. You can continue living there, paying rent at 30% below market rate. Their eyes widened with hope. But, I continued, there are conditions. First, you'll both attend financial management counseling. Second, you will not send any more money to Marcus. And third, I met their eyes firmly. You will acknowledge, in writing, how you've treated me all these years. That's blackmail, Dad protested weakly. That's accountability, I repeated. Something this family desperately needs. I stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. For years, you dismissed my achievements, belittled my choices, poured all your love and resources into Marcus while treating me like an afterthought. I turned back to face them. That ends now. Mom was crying openly now. Dad stared at his hands. The choice is yours, I said. Sign the agreement, keep your home, and maybe, we can build something new from the ashes of what this family has become. Or don't sign, lose the house, and continue enabling Marcus's destructive behavior. I placed a pen on the desk between them. But understand this, I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because sometimes love means forcing people to face hard truths. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then slowly, Dad reached for the pen. As they signed, my phone buzzed with a text from Minneapolis. Marcus had finally hit rock bottom, admitting to his regional director that he needed help. I'd already arranged for him to enter a program that would address his gambling addiction and teach him actual business ethics. Looking at my parents, I saw something I'd never seen before in their eyes when they looked at me. Respect. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of understanding. The car will take you home, I said, pressing a button to summon my driver. The counselor will contact you tomorrow to set up your first session. They stood, looking somehow both smaller and lighter than when they'd entered. Sarah. Mom paused at the door. I'm sorry. For everything. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. After they left, I sank back into my chair and finally let out a long breath. Phase 2 was complete. The family that had dismissed me for so long was finally seeing me clearly, not just as a successful businesswoman, but as someone strong enough to help them face their own failures. Jennifer knocked again, entering with a fresh stack of reports. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. They're eager to hear about the new expansion plans. I smiled, gathering my materials. Time to focus on the future, not just of Morgan Technologies, but of all the people who worked here. People like Jennifer, who deserved their chance to shine. As I walked into the boardroom, I caught my reflection in the window. The simple gray blazer was gone, replaced by one I'd chosen for myself. Not designer, not flashy, but perfectly suited to who I was. Someone who had built success on substance rather than style. The board members rose as I entered. They'd learned quickly that I was nothing like my brother, and everything a leader should be. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, let's talk about where we're going next. Because success, real success, isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And I was just getting started. The glass elevator at Morgan Technologies rose smoothly to the gleaming tower, each floor marking another step toward a moment I'd planned for 2 years. I adjusted my simple gray blazer, purchased from a department store, nothing like the designer suits surrounding me.
My in-laws were drunk at the wedding, but they didn't care even though people were whispering about them. They started yelling at me. It's too late now that you're married, but if you want to be part of this family, you need to show us you have enough money, they said. Yes, your dad is right, so make sure to give us $1,000 a month as a new bonus, they added. I was shocked by their demands. I couldn't believe they would say such things at my wedding reception. I just stared at them, feeling my face go pale. My dad took the microphone from them. Enough is enough. Don't you realize you're embarrassing yourselves? He said. My name is Linda. I am a 30-year-old office worker. I am currently dating Larry, who is 32 years old. I met him through a friend who was worried about me being single, so she introduced us. After dating for a year, Larry proposed, and now we are about to get married. I lost my mother when I was very young, and my father raised me on his own. He worked very hard to take care of me. I didn't have many worries growing up, but losing my mom, who I loved so much, deeply hurt me. Because of this, I was very careful with my emotions. That's why I hadn't dated anyone seriously since my school days. I even thought it would be okay if I stayed single forever. Then I met Larry. At first, I didn't feel any romantic feelings for him, even though he asked me out many times. Larry really cared about me and was always a gentleman. Slowly, I began to open my heart to him, and we started dating. He kept caring for me, and I felt very happy. He became very special to me, and I started thinking I wanted to be with him forever. Then he proposed, and we decided to get married. Larry understood everything about me and was always kind to me no matter what. Don't worry, if you're ever feeling unsure about something, I'll be here for you until you feel better. I love you, Linda. You can count on me, he would say. His words moved me. He promised to make me happy for the rest of my life. Just being with him warmed my heart. If he cared that much for me, I thought I should do the same for him. When I told my father that we decided to get married, he was so happy that he cried. Wow, Linda, you're finally getting married. I'm so happy for you, he said. Oh, Dad, you're being dramatic, I joked. Wow, I hadn't heard anything like that from you until now. I was always worried that you might never get married, he replied. Oh, really? I had no idea you were worried about that, I said. Well, every father worries about his daughter, you know. Anyway, congratulations, he said. Thanks, Dad, I replied. I was so happy to be congratulated by my dad, who had raised me by himself. I thought I would probably cry at the wedding, and my dad would probably cry even more since he was already crying now. With that, Larry and I started preparing for our wedding. We were both busy with our jobs, so our days were very hectic. We worked during the weekdays and made wedding preparations over the weekends. There was no time to rest. Our calendars were always full. On a rare day off, we were supposed to visit Larry's parents' house. I was going to meet Larry's parents for the first time. Larry had come over to meet my father right after he proposed to me. Originally, I had planned to visit Larry's parents right after that to introduce myself. But they were very busy, and our schedules never matched. Finally, some time passed, and we managed to arrange a visit. As we arrived at his parents' house, I suddenly felt nervous. Don't worry, my parents are very kind, Larry reassured me. His words made me feel a bit better, and I rang the doorbell. It was his mother who opened the door. Mom, I'm home, Larry said. Welcome home, Larry. It's so good of you to come, his mother replied warmly. As she talked with her son, I greeted her as politely as I could. Nice to meet you. My name is Linda, and I'm Larry's fiancée. I see, so you're Linda, she said. Her voice was much lower than when she spoke to Larry, and her smile vanished. She looked me up and down as if judging me. Then she led us to the living room, where her cold attitude didn't change. Linda, I'm curious about what you bring to the table. Larry is our treasure and our only child. If you're going to marry him, you need to be a suitable wife. Are you worthy of him? She asked, more like an interrogation. I was taken aback by her question. I hadn't expected such a cold attitude from my future mother-in-law and was at a loss for words. "You're going to join our family, you know. Are you ready for that?" she continued. True, marrying Larry meant joining his family. But it's not like Larry's family were the Kennedys or some well-known high society family. It's not like I was marrying into a royal family. Why was I being asked to make such a commitment? Besides, I wasn't even going to live with them. I don't like being pressured with questions like these. As I was trying to figure out how to respond, his mother seemed impatient with my slow reply and scolded me harshly. "When I ask you a question, answer me right away. You're so rude," she snapped. "I'm asking if you're ready for this," she continued, raising her voice. Despite feeling overwhelmed, I managed to say, "I hope that Larry and I will support each other in our marriage." When I said that, his mother was not convinced. What a naive thing to say. You aren't just going to support each other. You are supposed to support Larry. It's your job as a wife to support your husband. You don't even understand the basics, she criticized. Then Larry's father, who was sitting next to her, intervened. "Honey, calm down." "Sorry about that, Linda. You must have been startled by my wife's words," he said, trying to ease the tension. "It's all right," I replied, trying to remain calm. His mother is very protective of her only son. Maybe she was just nervous and spoke without thinking. Just then, Larry's brother walked in. He spoke in a quiet, calm, and gentle tone. He seemed like a kind man, which gave me a moment of relief, but that relief was short-lived. With a smile on his face, he said the most unexpected thing. "What my wife says is actually justified. What concerns me the most is that you come from a single-parent family." "What do you mean by that?" I asked, confused. "Well, being raised by just one parent doesn't have a good public image. We can't be too happy to have such a person become the wife of our only son, can we?" he explained. "Hold on a minute," I said, unable to let this comment slide. "What is wrong with being raised by a single parent? My father worked very hard to raise me by himself. I am very thankful for my upbringing, and I am proud of my father. Being raised by a single parent doesn't make me any less valuable." But they still argued. Since you were missing one parent, you couldn't have learned how to be a good wife, do housework, and such. I responded, "I did a lot of housework to help my father. I can also cook pretty well, so please don't say that." Despite my response, Larry's mother ignored what I said and finally stated, "I will allow you to marry Larry, but in exchange, you must promise to devote everything to us because we are Larry's parents. Can you promise me that?" I was shocked. "What?" "Since you came here to ask for our permission to marry our son, you do know what your duties are, don't you?" Before I could say more, he continued the conversation. I found that my in-laws had completely taken over the conversation, giving me little chance to respond. That night, as I thought more about the marriage, I decided to share my feelings with Larry. "Say, Larry, do your parents always talk to people like that?" "What about it?" Larry seemed unfazed. I was surprised that Larry didn't see anything wrong with what his parents had said to me. "Well, I mean the way your parents spoke to me and what they said," I tried to explain. "Oh, really? Well, they were just talking about whether you were ready for this marriage. I get that your parents are worried about their son's marriage, but I feel like what your parents were saying was a bit too much." "Really? Why is that?" "My parents didn't say anything wrong. Besides, they've given us permission to get married, so don't worry about it." That's true, but I felt uneasy that Larry seemed to side with his parents more than with me. That was very troubling. I guess he realized I was feeling unsure because he gave me a hug. "Linda, you don't have to worry so much. My parents are just a bit upset because their only son is getting married," he said. He spoke as if he didn't fully support me. "It's all going to be fine. Don't overthink it. I'm sure they just want what's best for us. They want us to be as good of a couple as they are. That's why they were a bit harsh." "Oh, really?" I replied, like he said maybe his parents have high expectations for us. But even if that's the case, I don't think it's right for them to belittle me because I was raised by my father. I don't think people who say such things make a good couple. We are the ones getting married, and we should be the focus, not their approval or disapproval. With that perspective, although I was still a bit upset, I decided not to dwell too much on his parents' opinions. Then the day of the wedding arrived. We had many guests, including our relatives, friends, colleagues, and bosses. I walked down the aisle with my father, who had raised me all my life. Larry and I exchanged our vows and rings. We were met with applause, and for the first time, I truly realized that I was getting married to Larry. I felt a happiness I had never felt before. As we walked into the reception hall, we made our way through the crowd, greeted by videos of us as part of the entertainment. It was a joyful time. I chatted with friends I hadn't seen in a while, and many people congratulated us. Despite my earlier worries about his parents, I was glad I had decided to marry Larry. I was glad we decided to have a memorable day. After the ceremony, we planned to officially register our marriage, and Larry and I would become husband and wife. I cherished every moment and felt so happy. Time flew by, and soon it was time for the final part of the event. The bridegroom and both sets of parents lined up to greet the guests. But I started to feel uneasy because of Larry's parents. We were all supposed to be standing in line, but his parents were wobbly on their feet. If you looked closely, you could see that their faces were bright red. They had drunk too much. Some relatives asked if they were okay. My in-laws were clearly drunk. But we had to wrap up the ceremony and get it over with. The moderator handed the microphone to me and Larry. Suddenly, Larry's mother snatched my hand away from him and yelled at me like a professional wrestler in the middle of a challenge. "Listen to me, Linda. After this wedding, you are going to devote yourself to us completely. Prepare yourself because we are going to test you really hard." The guests started whispering to each other, and some even thought it was a joke and laughed. Then Larry's father grabbed the microphone. "Linda, don't you feel embarrassed to wear a dress like that?" "It doesn't suit you at all, dear. You should tell her the truth," his mother chimed in. As expected, the whispers among the guests changed in tone. I looked at Larry, hoping he would stop his father's rude comments, but Larry said he couldn't do that and that his parents weren't doing anything wrong. It became clear he would never protect me from his parents in the future. That was the moment I realized it. I was certain of it even as the hall buzzed around us. My in-laws were drunk and continued to insult me. "Well, you're already married, but if you're going to be part of this family, you need to prove that you have enough money," they said. "Yes, that's right," they continued. "After you register your marriage at the city hall, you should give us a few thousand a month and your entire bonus." I was shocked by their words. I never thought they would say such things at our wedding reception. I just stared at them, feeling my face go pale. My father took the microphone from them. "Enough of this. Don't you realize you're making fools of yourselves?" he said, though still showing some respect. His parents glared at my father. "Why are you interrupting us while we're talking?" I knew this woman's father was no good. "Single parents are never any good," they said. How dare they insult my father? I thought. My father, keeping his cool, replied, "You people are even worse than I imagined. You even refuse to meet me because I am a single father. I never thought that someone like you would work for President Scott. President Scott is such a respectable person. I assumed his employees would be decent as well." At that, my father-in-law's face turned very serious. How do you know President Scott?" "He's a business partner of my company and, more importantly, an old friend of mine," my father explained. "And speaking of single parents, President Scott was raised by his mother alone. So you just insulted the president of the company you work for." Seeing my in-laws' faces fall at my father's words, I realized they finally understood the mess they had gotten themselves into. "I apologize, sir. Please don't tell the president about this," my in-law pleaded, suddenly falling to his knees. Just moments before, he had acted like he was in charge, but now he looked defeated. I could hear laughter from the guests. Some even pulled out their cell phones to record the scene. "No matter how much you apologize, you can't take back your words," my dad said. He walked over to me and asked if I wanted to go home with him. I said yes and took the microphone from Larry's hand. "Thank you for the great entertainment, but there will be no marriage," I announced to Larry and his parents and to everyone who attended. "I will make sure to return the money you gave us for this occasion." Then I left the reception hall with my dad. I caught a glimpse of Larry and his parents looking dismayed, and soon after, his relatives rushed over with worried expressions on their faces. The place must have been in complete chaos. As I returned their money, I apologized to the guests. They all expressed sympathy for me and praised me and my dad for our actions, saying it was good that we weren't taken advantage of by such terrible people. Later, Larry's coworkers who had attended the reception must have spread the word about what happened at his company. Larry became known for having such unreasonable parents and was criticized for having a weak character. His embarrassment was so great that he resigned voluntarily. Of course, the president of my father-in-law's company found out about the incident. Larry's father was demoted and sent to an insignificant division of the company, transferred to a remote office in the countryside. I heard that Larry's family has been ostracized by all his relatives because of what happened at the wedding. While it's unfortunate, it really was their own doing, and sometimes things like that just can't be avoided. In the meantime, I've been using this opportunity to strengthen my relationship with my dad. We've been spending more quality time together, and it's helped me appreciate all he's done for me even more. One day, he sat me down for a serious talk. "Linda, are you interested in running the business?" he asked, looking at me with a mixture of hope and seriousness. "Do you mean?" I started, a bit unsure where he was heading with this. "Why don't you work towards becoming the president of my company?" he suggested. It was a big step, and he seemed to believe I was ready to take it on. "I'll do my best," I promised him, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. I decided then to focus on stepping up my game at work rather than getting entangled in romantic relationships for now. I wanted to prove to myself and to my dad that I could excel and perhaps one day be a great leader like him. Currently, I am deeply involved in learning everything I can at my dad's company. The work is challenging but fulfilling, and I'm determined to make the most of this opportunity. Reflecting on the wedding fiasco, it's clear that Larry's in-laws were quite unreasonable, turning what should have been a beautiful event into a spectacle. Thankfully, since the marriage wasn't officially registered, I was spared from a legally binding mistake. Now, free from any marital ties and with no looming in-law issues, I can focus solely on my career aspirations. It's a relief to know that out of a chaotic situation came a clear path forward for me. I look forward to what the future holds and am excited about the potential of leading the company. I wish myself all the best and hope that anyone watching this story can take something valuable from it. Thank you for staying till the end. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed this story, and I hope to see you in the next video.
My name is Alexandra Mitchell, and I learned early in life that some sisters aren't meant to be best friends. Sophia, my older sister by 3 years, made sure I understood that from the moment I could walk. Growing up, Sophia was always the star of the family. Straight A's, student body president, champion debater, she collected achievements like others collected stamps. Our parents' pride in her was matched only by their constant disappointment in me. Where Sophia excelled in public speaking, I preferred quiet research. While she dominated social circles, I spent hours in the library, studying patterns in law and business that others overlooked. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood, playing on repeat at every family dinner, every parent-teacher conference, every holiday gathering. But what no one knew, what Sophia never noticed through her veil of superiority, was that I was building something bigger than high school accolades or college acceptance letters. It started during my junior year of high school. While Sophia was celebrating her acceptance to Harvard Law School, I was quietly launching my first legal consulting business from my bedroom. Using online forums and anonymous profiles, I began connecting struggling law firms with the resources they needed to succeed. By the time I graduated high school, I had built a network of over 50 law firms that relied on my research and strategies. Of course, none of them knew they were working with a teenager. "I just don't understand you, Alexandra," my mother sighed at my high school graduation. "Sophia's going to Harvard, and you're taking a gap year to figure things out." What is there to figure out? I didn't tell them that my gap year was actually the first phase of my business expansion plan. I didn't mention that the modest savings account they thought I had was actually approaching 7 figures. And I certainly didn't reveal that 3 of the top law firms in Boston had already hired my consulting company, not knowing they would soon be working with their star student's little sister. Sophia thrived at Harvard, of course. Every holiday break brought new stories of her success, new reasons for our parents to beam with pride. Meanwhile, I built my empire in silence. When my parents pressed me about college, I enrolled in online business courses, letting them believe I was at least trying, while I orchestrated mergers and acquisitions through my growing network of shell companies. By the time Safi graduated from Harvard Law, I owned controlling interests in 7 major law firms across the East Coast. My company, Mitchell Strategic Solutions, had become the invisible force behind some of the most successful legal practices in the country. But on paper, I was just the quiet daughter who hadn't found her path yet. Everything changed the day Safia joined Preston and Hayes, one of Boston's most prestigious law firms. She didn't know that 6 months earlier, I had acquired it through a complex series of transactions. She walked into her first day of work, proud and confident, not realizing that her little sister was technically her boss. "You should see my office, Alex," she gloated during a family dinner. "Corner suite, full staff, partner track within 5 years. What are you doing these days? Still with that little consulting business?" I smiled and took a sip of wine. Something like that. The truth was, I was in the middle of the biggest acquisition of my career. Preston and Hayes was just the beginning. I was positioning myself to take over Blackwood International, the largest law firm conglomerate on the East Coast. The deal would make me one of the most powerful figures in the legal world, all before my 25th birthday. But Safia couldn't help herself. She had to maintain her position as the family success story. That's why, when I met James Walker at a charity gala, she tried to stake her claim. "He's from one of Boston's oldest families," she told our mother, loud enough for me to hear. "And he's looking for someone successful, accomplished. Not really your scene, Alex." What Safia didn't know was that James had met me 3 months earlier in my role as the CEO of Mitchell Strategic Solutions. He had been representing Blackwood International in the acquisition negotiations, not realizing that the powerful, elusive CEO he was dealing with was the same woman he was falling in love with. When James proposed 6 months later, Safia was livid. She had been dropping hints about her own interest in him, only to watch her underachieving sister snag one of Boston's most eligible bachelors. "It doesn't make sense," I overheard her telling our mother. "She's nobody in this city. She barely has a real job. Something's not right about this." The wedding planning became her obsession. She insisted on being my maid of honor, not out of sisterly love, but because it gave her access to every detail, every guest list, every moment she could use to dig into my life. What she discovered must have shocked her: the inconsistencies in my story, the mysterious meetings, the connections that someone with a little consulting business shouldn't have. She spent months gathering evidence, planning her moment of triumph. She chose our wedding day to spring her trap, not realizing she was walking into one of her own. The ceremony was perfect. Boston's historic Trinity Church filled with the city's elite, judges, lawyers, business leaders. Many of them were there for James, the respected attorney from an old Boston family. None of them knew that the bride owned most of their law firms. But as the minister asked if anyone objected to the union, Safia rose from her seat beside me, a wicked smile playing on her lips. Little did she know, I had been waiting for this moment. After all, some sisters aren't meant to be best friends. They're meant to be lessons in humility. If anyone knows any reason why these two should not be joined in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. Those traditional words hung in the air of Trinity Church for just a moment before Safia stood up, her blue maid of honor dress rustling as she stepped forward. The smirk on her face told me she had been waiting for this moment. "Actually," she announced, her voice carrying through the stunned silence, "I have something to say." Our mother gasped. James squeezed my hand, but I remained calm. After all, I had prepared for this possibility. Before we continue this farce, Sophia declared, pulling out a folder from behind her bouquet, everyone here deserves to know the truth about Alexandra Mitchell. She opened the folder with dramatic flair. My sister has been lying to all of you. She's not the simple business consultant she claims to be. She's been operating under false pretenses, infiltrating law firms, manipulating her way into business deals. Murmurs rippled through the church. In the front row, our father's face had turned red with embarrassment. Our mother looked like she might faint. I have proof, Sophia continued, clearly enjoying herself. Bank records showing suspicious transactions. Shell companies leading back to her. She's been deceiving everyone, including her fiancé. She turned to James. Did you know your bride isn't who she claims to be? That while you've been working on the Blackwood International acquisition, she's been orchestrating it? I finished for her, my voice calm. Sophia faltered for a moment, but pressed on. She's not qualified to run any of these companies. She never even went to law school. You're right, I said, standing up in my wedding dress. I never went to law school. I pulled out my phone and opened an email. I was too busy building an empire. With one tap, I sent the email I had prepared. Throughout the church, phones began buzzing as Boston's legal elite received the notification. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, as of this moment, Mitchell Strategic Solutions has completed its acquisition of Blackwood International. This merger makes us the largest legal services corporation in New England. Sophia's face had gone pale. What are you talking about? I smiled. You're right about one thing, Sophia. I'm not a lawyer. I own the law firms, including Preston and Hayes, where you've been working for the past year. The folder slipped from her hands, papers scattering across the church floor. That's impossible. You're lying. Am I? I turned to the assembled guests. Judge Harrison, would you like to confirm who owns controlling interest in your firm? Or perhaps Mr. Blackwood himself would care to explain who he's been negotiating with for the past 6 months. William Blackwood stood up from his pew. Everything she says is true. Alexandra Mitchell is the CEO of Mitchell Strategic Solutions. She's been the driving force behind the most significant legal industry consolidation in Boston's history. Sophia staggered backward. But you're my little sister. The underachiever. The disappointment. The disappointment who now owns the company where you work. I corrected her. Speaking of which, we should discuss your recent performance reviews. They're not very impressive. Our mother had found her voice. Alexandra, why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked. You were too busy comparing me to Sophia's Harvard degree to notice I was building something bigger than any law school could teach. I turned back to my sister. By the way, since you're so interested in exposing secrets, should we discuss what really happened with the Anderson case last month? The one where you claimed full credit for the settlement. Sophia's face went from pale to ashen. You wouldn't. The actual case files show that you barely contributed, I continued. In fact, your primary contribution was taking credit for work done by your junior associates, something that's become a pattern in your career. That's not true, she protested weakly. The records indicate otherwise, as do the complaints filed by your team, which have been sitting in HR, complaints I now own, by the way. James stepped forward, taking my hand. He was smiling. I should mention, he added, that as chief counsel for Blackwood International, I've known exactly who Alexandra is from the beginning. We met during the initial merger negotiations. long before that charity gala where you tried to warn me about her." Sophia looked around desperately, but she found no allies in the crowd. The city's most powerful legal minds were all nodding in recognition. They had all dealt with Mitchell Strategic Solutions, even if they hadn't known the owner's identity until now. "So," I said, straightening my wedding dress, "would you like to continue exposing secrets, dear sister? Or shall we proceed with my wedding?" Sophia stood frozen, her carefully planned moment of triumph transformed into her own public humiliation. Finally, she managed to whisper, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "You never asked," I replied simply. "You were too busy looking down at me to notice I had risen above you." I turned to the minister. "Shall we continue?" But Sophia wasn't quite finished. As she sank back into her seat, she muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "This isn't over." I caught her eye and smiled. "Actually, it is. Check your email." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. Her eyes widened as she read the message. An official notice of her immediate termination from Preston and Hayes, effective that moment. "You can't fire me," she hissed. "I'm not firing you," I corrected her. "The evidence of your misconduct and credit theft is firing you. I'm just the owner who approved the termination." The minister cleared his throat, clearly unsure how to proceed after such drama, but I simply nodded for him to continue. After all, this was still my wedding day, even if it had turned into something more. As I stood there, preparing to say my vows, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in one of the church's stained glass windows. I saw not the quiet, overlooked younger sister, but the powerful woman I had become. The woman who had built an empire while others underestimated her. And as I looked at Sophia, now sitting humiliated in her maid of honor dress, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success that no one saw coming. The ceremony continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. This was no longer just a wedding. It was a coronation. My parents sat in stunned silence, processing the revelation that their underachieving daughter was actually one of the most powerful people in the room. As I said, "I do," I couldn't help but think how fitting it was that my wedding day had become the day I finally stepped out of the shadows. After all, what better way to start a new life than by revealing your true power? But even as I celebrated, I knew this was just the beginning. Sophia's words, "This isn't over," echoed in my mind. She had always been competitive, vindictive. She wouldn't take this humiliation lying down. What she didn't realize was that I was counting on that. The reception at the Boston Harbor Hotel should have been the perfect celebration. Instead, it became the battlefield for the next phase of Sophia's war against me. I was barely through my first dance with James when my phone buzzed with urgent messages. Sophia had gone straight from the church to the media, attempting to spin a story about corporate espionage and illegal business practices. Mitchell Strategic Solutions built through deception. Read the headline she had somehow managed to plant in an online business journal. Harvard graduate exposes sister's fraudulent empire. I smiled, showing the article to James. He raised an eyebrow. "She really doesn't know when to quit, does she?" "No," I replied. "She doesn't." But I was ready for this too. I nodded to Catherine, my chief of operations, who had been waiting discreetly by the bar. She immediately began making calls. Within an hour, every major news outlet in Boston received a comprehensive press package detailing Mitchell Strategic Solutions' completely legal rise to power, including all regulatory filings and compliance records. But Sophia wasn't done. As guests mingled over champagne and hors d'oeuvres, she made her way through the crowd. whispering to key figures in Boston's legal community. "Did you know she's been recording your private conversations?" I overheard her telling Judge Harrison. Every law firm she acquired, she gathered dirt on the partners first. What she didn't realize was that each person she approached had already received a message from me, warning them about her desperate attempts to salvage her reputation. The breaking point came when she approached William Blackwood himself. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice carrying just enough to draw attention, "I have evidence that my sister blackmailed you into this merger. She threatened to expose your offshore accounts." The room fell silent. Blackwood looked at her for a long moment, then laughed. "Miss Mitchell, or should I say, former Attorney Mitchell, your sister never blackmailed me. In fact, she was the one who helped me legitimize those accounts last year, saving my company millions in potential fines. That's why I agreed to the merger." Sophia's face turned red. But the documents I found were decoys," I interrupted, walking over. "I knew you were searching my office at Preston and Hayes. Every secret document you discovered was placed there specifically for you to find." "That's impossible," she stammered. "The banking records, the shell companies, all legal, all traceable, all part of legitimate business operations," I explained calmly. "Did you really think I wouldn't protect myself against exactly this kind of attack?" Our parents, who had been watching this exchange with increasing discomfort, finally approached. "Sophia," our father said, his voice heavy with disappointment, "enough." But she wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking. "I still have proof. Recordings of your meetings, documents I copied." "Actually," James interjected, "you don't. As chief counsel of Blackwood International, I should inform you that removing confidential documents from Preston and Hayes constitutes a serious breach of contract, not to mention a violation of the Bar Association's ethics code." Sophia's face went pale. "You wouldn't dare report me to the bar." "I don't have to," I said softly. "Your own actions today, attempting to disrupt a legal merger with false allegations, stealing confidential documents, trying to manipulate the media, those actions require me to report you. As the owner of Preston and Hayes, I have a legal obligation to do so." "You're bluffing," she whispered, but her voice trembled. I pulled out my own phone and showed her the screen. A formal complaint to the Massachusetts Bar Association, ready to be filed. "Last chance, Sophia. Walk away now. Leave Boston. Take the severance package I'm still willing to offer and start fresh somewhere else." "You're destroying my career," she protested. "No," our mother suddenly spoke up. "You did that yourself. All these years, you were so busy proving you were better than Alexandra that you never noticed she had actually become better than you." Sophia looked around the room, finally seeing the truth. The powerful people she had tried to turn against me were all nodding in agreement. Her attempted power play had backfired completely. "Fine," she spat. "You win. You've always been playing a longer game than me, haven't you?" "The difference is, I was playing to win," I replied. "You were just playing to make me lose." She turned and walked out of the reception, her blue dress disappearing into the Boston night. As the door closed behind her, I felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. "Are you okay?" James asked softly. I squeezed his hand. "I am. It needed to end this way." Our parents approached, looking shell-shocked but proud. "We had no idea," my father said. "All these years. You saw what you expected to see," I replied. "Sophia was the star. I was the disappointment. It made it easier to build something extraordinary while everyone was looking the other way." The rest of the reception passed in a blur of congratulations and celebrations. But now people were celebrating more than just my marriage. They were celebrating the emergence of a new power in Boston's legal world. Later that night, as James and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I received one final email from Safia. "You've won," she wrote. "I'm moving to Chicago. But remember this, you taught me that appearances can be deceiving. One day, when you least expect it, I'll have built something of my own, and then we'll see who the real winner is." I showed the email to James. He looked concerned, but I just smiled. "Let her try," I said. "Building something real takes more than ambition and revenge. It takes patience, strategy, and the wisdom to know that true success isn't about beating others. It's about becoming the best version of yourself." 10 years later, I stood in my office at the top of the Mitchell Blackwood Tower, looking out over Boston's skyline. The empire I had built had grown beyond even my expectations. Safia had tried to start several ventures in Chicago, but each had failed because she was still focused on competing with me, rather than creating something meaningful. Our parents had finally learned to see me for who I was, not who they had assumed I would be. And James had become not just my husband, but my true partner, in business and in life. On my desk sat a framed photo from our wedding, the moment right after I revealed the truth about Mitchell Strategic Solutions. In it, I'm standing tall in my wedding dress, power and confidence radiating from my posture. Safia is in the background, her face a mask of shocked realization. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch most carefully. Because while some people spend their lives trying to prove their worth through words and showmanship, others build empires in silence. My phone buzzed. Another major law firm was ready to join our network. As I prepared for the meeting, I thought about how far I'd come from that overlooked younger sister. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success so complete that it transcends revenge altogether. And sometimes the greatest triumph isn't in proving others wrong, but in proving yourself right. The empire I built wasn't just about showing up my sister or proving my worth to my parents. It was about creating something lasting, something meaningful, something that would outlive any family drama or personal vendetta. And as I sat down to sign the papers that would further expand my business empire, I couldn't help but smile. Because in the end, the quiet sister had roared the loudest, not through words, but through actions. Not through competition, but through creation. That's the thing about true power. It doesn't need to announce itself. It simply is. And that's a lesson Safia never learned.
Do you truly believe there's a place for you here? My mother-in-law's words sliced through the air as we sat in the restaurant, the aroma of the lavish meal before us tainted by her disdain. "You're just a daughter-in-law, not blood," she added, a smirk playing on her lips. Her hand waved dismissively, a gesture that felt like an invitation to leave. Anger coursed through me, making my hands tremble as I pushed back my chair to stand. But before I could exit the room, she halted me with a raised hand. "Wait. What about the bill? If you're leaving early, leave the money," she demanded, a smug expression on her face. I met her gaze with a defiant smile. "Why would I pay for a stranger's bill?" I retorted. "My name is Maya, a 29-year-old office worker. My husband Tyrell and I were content in our relationship, except for one persistent problem, my overbearing mother-in-law. Living in close proximity to her, she invaded our lives, criticizing my cooking and homemaking skills. Uninvited, she'd barge in, pointing out every flaw, all while pretending to be a concerned mother. When I complained to Tyrell, he didn't believe me. In his eyes, his mother was just a loving parent, blind to her manipulations. As time passed, her intrusions grew worse. Armed with a key my husband had given her, she'd enter our home, criticizing and complaining about everything. She even tarnished my reputation with the neighbors, spreading lies about me. I pleaded with Terrell to move away, but he remained indifferent, busy with work. Then, a turning point arrived. His successful project led to a promotion and a significant salary increase. Seizing the opportunity, I suggested expanding our family. Now that our income has grown, perhaps it's time to think about having children. I proposed, hoping that this positive change might finally open his eyes to the toxic presence of his mother. I thought it was a good idea, but if we're considering having children, I prefer to live in a more child-friendly town. There are very few child care centers here, and there are no parks for children to play in. Isn't it time for us to move? Finally, my husband gave a positive response about moving, and I was happier about this than the news of his promotion. However, that feeling didn't last long. The next day, my mother-in-law came over as usual without any notice. I was fed up, assuming she had come to nag again. But something seemed different this time. I've decided to celebrate my son's promotion, so I've reserved a restaurant. It's a very expensive place, but it's elegant. The food is top-notch, and the staff's attitude is wonderful. It has a great word-of-mouth reputation, she said, inviting me to join. That's nice. Good for you, I replied, trying to be polite, although I was as unfriendly as ever. Well, never mind. I want you to come to this restaurant too. Please come. I'll check my schedule, but it's probably impossible, I added. Don't say that. We'll be waiting for you, she insisted. Even though I answered that way, she just smirked and left. Until now, she had been excluding me, but now she was inviting me and saying she'd wait. There must be something going on. When I asked my husband when he got home, he said he had already told his mother that we would go together. She had reserved that restaurant for us, and he was looking forward to it. You feel the same way, don't you, Maya? He asked. Sorry, but I'm not looking forward to it. I don't know how much money it will cost at such an expensive place. I don't want to go. Just say I have urgent business and enjoy yourself, I replied, feeling apprehensive about the situation. Why are you thinking so negatively? Besides, it's not just us going to the restaurant. My brothers are bringing their wives too. It would be bad if you didn't come with the whole family, my husband insisted, excited about going to a fancy restaurant for the first time. Even though I didn't want to, I felt compelled to comply. My words no longer reached my husband. If he believed my mother-in-law more than me, I decided to record her harassment with a voice recorder I bought online. She was probably planning to harass me at the celebration too. I would record her voice and play it for my husband. If he still defended her, I would divorce him. With that decision, I felt a bit better. Still, the day to meet my mother-in-law at the restaurant was depressing, and I kept sighing. I hardly knew my husband's brothers, having only met them at the wedding, and I had no memory of talking to their wives beyond greetings. When we arrived at the restaurant, the waiter led us to a large room where my mother-in-law, the other son, and his wife, and the third son and his wife were already seated. The lavish spread was already adorning the table, with just one vacant seat. My husband, puzzled, tilted his head in confusion. Did the waiter make a mistake with the number of suits? He wondered aloud. I'll go ask. Everyone start eating, he said, leaving the room. The moment he stepped out, my mother-in-law stood up, her expression twisted into a sneer. There's no seat for you. Why should I invite a stranger who just married my son to a family celebration? She said, her tone dripping with disdain. So I'll give you a choice. Show your sincerity and be accepted as family, or leave and never show your face to me again. Choose now. I'm leaving, I answered without hesitation. Mother-in-law was momentarily flustered. Did she think I would beg her to recognize me as family in this situation? No way. Listen to the end. If you pay the entire bill here, I'll recognize you as Terrell's wife. You must be frustrated being treated as a stranger, so pay up and become family, she demanded. I told you I'm leaving. Why should I pay for someone else's family's bill? I retorted, turning my back on her. Mother-in-law slammed the table and shouted, Don't you get it? I'm offering to make you family. Are you okay with being a stranger? Pay up. No, I'm fine being a stranger. Since I'm a stranger, I won't pay for your meal. Goodbye. Mother-in-law chased after me, but by the time she reached the entrance of the room from the farthest seat, I was already at the exit of the restaurant. When I got home, thinking I'd email my husband, he returned within 10 minutes. The waiter said the reservation number wasn't wrong, and my mom was causing a scene. I heard the situation from my brother. I'm sorry for making you feel bad. "You managed to come back quickly," he said. It seemed like my declaration that I was fine being a stranger had also stirred something in the eldest son's wife and the third son's wife. They had previously thought enduring harassment silently was the only option, but seeing me talk back made them realize they could do it too. In their momentum, both of them left, and our husbands, the eldest and third sons, hurriedly followed suit. I had braced myself for complaints from my mother-in-law, and sure enough, within 3 hours, the phone started ringing incessantly. It was so disruptive that I eventually blocked the calls. However, one call managed to get through from an unknown number. "Hello, sorry for calling so late. Is this Maya's mobile phone?" The man on the other end identified himself as a police officer from the nearby police station. He informed me that after being left alone, my mother-in-law had tried to eat what she could and subsequently attempted to make me foot the bill later on. However, the restaurant staff, already disapproving of my mother-in-law after the earlier disturbance, declined her request. They believed I wouldn't return to pay after leaving in anger. Ignoring all her calls, my mother-in-law was then suggested to pay by card, but she lacked a credit card and hadn't brought enough cash to cover everyone's meals. In a desperate bid, she tried contacting other family members to cover the costs, but no one responded. Frustrated and cornered, she started yelling, blaming me entirely for the situation. Her anger escalated, leading to a scene where she damaged expensive vases and flower pots at the restaurant. This chaos prompted the restaurant to call the police. The responding officers managed to calm down my furious mother-in-law, but she adamantly refused to accept any wrongdoing. The restaurant, not only unpaid but also burdened with a troublesome customer, sought help to escort her home. Feeling guilty about ignoring a call from the police, my husband and I reluctantly returned to the restaurant. Upon our arrival, my mother-in-law was being pacified by the police. The moment she spotted me, she raised her eyes and, crossing her arms, screamed, "You good for nothing. This situation happened because you didn't pay the bill. It's natural to help your mother, isn't it? Pay up now." I was utterly astonished when my mother-in-law uttered something almost threatening, even with the police present. They had clearly stated that if no one took her home, they would either escort her to her in-laws' house in a patrol car or arrest her for dining and dashing. "Please take her away, arrest her, or whatever it takes, just make her take responsibility," I said, my voice cold and resolute. Mother-in-law's eyes widened in shock at my words. "How can you say something so cold? I can't believe it. Just pay up. It's bad luck to have a family member arrested," she pleaded. "I don't care. I'm not family, and I don't want to get close to someone who's talking crazy and causing a scene," I replied, attempting to leave the restaurant and let the police handle the situation. However, my husband, who had remained silent all along, glared at me. "I understand that what was said and done to Maya was terrible. But is it something bad enough to be arrested for?" he questioned, defending his mother. "You're missing the point. She's in trouble with the police because she dined and dashed and caused a scene at the restaurant. I have nothing to do with it. Or are you saying that I'm the one at fault for not paying for 6 people's meals, even though I didn't eat?" I retorted. My husband fell silent but walked past me toward the police and the restaurant staff. I knew what he intended to do. Anticipating his actions, I called out to his retreating back. "If you're going to pay for her meal and compensate them, we're getting divorced. Think about that." My husband didn't respond to my words and silently took out his wallet. I sighed and left the restaurant. Walking the familiar road back home, I started packing my essential belongings, preparing to leave. Just before the date changed, my husband finally returned. "Mom's not getting arrested. It seems she was really in the wrong. But the restaurant said they'd forgive her if I compensated them and promised she'd never come back. I didn't have nearly enough money, so I had my brothers come and help." "Oh, I'm so tired," he explained, his voice weary. He continued rambling about what happened after I left, seemingly annoyed by my lack of reaction. Then he approached me, noticing my packed bags. "Hey, what's with these bags?" he asked, puzzled. "I'm preparing to leave the house because we're getting divorced. I told you that if you defended her, we'd get divorced. You're not going to say you didn't hear me, are you?" I replied firmly. My husband looked down at me, his eyes wide with astonishment. Then he raised his gaze and began to yell. "What's going on today? You've been acting strange all day. I understand that Mom did something terrible, but why do we have to get divorced? I've told you I'm being harassed, and even with evidence and other people's testimony, You still choose your mother, who was almost arrested over me. Is it strange that I want to divorce someone like that? I've had enough." My husband continued to say various things, but it all went in one ear and out the other. I prepared to leave the house and made preparations for divorce. The next morning, I immediately went to get the divorce papers. When I signed and handed them to my husband, he made a big fuss about not wanting to divorce. However, when I mentioned involving a lawyer, he reluctantly signed, and I submitted the papers right away. Finally, I was able to return to being a stranger. Afterward, my husband moved out of the house and went to live with his parents. Apparently, he had relied on me for most of the housework, so he couldn't manage it himself. As a result, the house became a mess. Disliking the dirty house, he canceled the apartment lease and decided to return to his parents' home. Additionally, the eldest and third sons faced similar outcomes. On the day when my husband called his brothers to help with the compensation, they each had a big fight with their wives. The wives protested that they didn't want to pay for something that was their mother's fault, but the brothers used their savings to assist their mother without consulting them. Moreover, the brothers believed mother-in-law's words, thinking they might get arrested because of their unreasonable wives. Their love cooled at the sight of them belittling me, and they were immediately confronted with the prospect of divorce. Both of them returned to their parents' homes, refusing to do housework. In the end, mother-in-law and her 3 childlike brothers also returned to the in-laws' house. Thanks to this situation, they became a subject of mockery among the neighbors, who spread the word that all the brothers were abandoned by their wives. Mother-in-law dismissed these rumors as nonsense, passionately defending her sons and blaming us wives for their failures. The husbands, hearing the story, smugly nodded, convinced that divorcing them was the right decision. However, my relationship with the neighbors remained decent, and nobody believed these tales. They were aware of mother-in-law's nasty personality and kept their distance, quietly laughing at her. Mother-in-law became known as a failed mother who couldn't educate her sons, while the husbands gained a reputation in the neighborhood as mama's boys who defended their mother instead of protecting their wives. Despite the furious attempts of mother-in-law and the husbands to contact me, I had changed all my contact information and moved to a new house. In the end, they couldn't find us, and they lived their lives constantly complaining. Since I'm no longer involved with mother-in-law and the others, my days have become enjoyable. Being free from the stress of dealing with her is a significant relief, and making new friends has also been wonderful. In fact, during the divorce process, I bonded with the ex-wives of the eldest and third sons over our shared grievances about mother-in-law. Now, we often go out for meals and enjoy shopping on weekends. In giving me such wonderful friends, I might even have to thank my ex-husband. The day after tomorrow, we're all planning to visit a new cafe. From now on, we can do what we want. It might sound obvious, but it feels more liberating than ever before. I want to lead my own life without getting involved with such toxic people, and I am genuinely grateful for the friendships I've found. I believe I would still be living alone if it weren't for them. The reason I'm not lonely now and the reason I can live happily is all thanks to them. I'm truly thankful, and I hope this relationship continues forever.
The invitation to the annual Sullivan family reunion sat on my desk, its gold-embossed lettering catching the morning light streaming through my penthouse windows. 15 years of carefully maintained deception were about to end, and oddly enough, it wasn't even my choice. I picked up my phone and reread the email that had triggered everything. Forbes 30 under 40, the new face of digital art. Sophia Sullivan's NFT empire reaches $3.8 billion valuation. The article would be published tomorrow, just 2 days before the family reunion. My carefully constructed facade was about to shatter, and there was nothing I could do about it. "Miss Sullivan?" My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your brother Marcus is on line 1. Again." Of course he was. He'd been calling nonstop since the press release went out to major publications. I took a deep breath and picked up the phone. "Hello, Marcus." "What the hell, Sophia?" He didn't bother with pleasantries. "I just got a call from Business Insider asking for a comment about my billionaire sister. Want to explain that?" I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. I guess you'll have to wait for the article like everyone else. Cut the crap, he snapped. All these years, you've been letting us think you were barely getting by. Mom and Dad have been worried sick about you. I couldn't help but laugh. Worried? Is that what you call it? The constant lectures about getting a real job. The snide comments about how I'm wasting my potential. They were trying to help. No, they were trying to control me. Just like they tried to control you, and you let them. Silence fell on the other end of the line. Marcus had always been the good child, following our parents' carefully planned path. Business school, MBA, joining our father's investment firm. The golden son who never strayed from the script. Just tell me one thing, he finally said. How long? How long have you been hiding this? I stood up and walked to the window, watching a private helicopter land on a nearby building's helipad. My helicopter, actually. One of 3 I owned. Remember when I moved to that tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn? When you first started with your digital art nonsense. That was, he paused, calculating. 15 years ago. That's right. Everyone thought I was crazy, throwing away my finance degree to doodle on computers, as Dad called it. But what none of you knew was that I'd already sold my first NFT collection for $50,000. $50,000? Back then? And 6 months later, I sold another for $200,000. By the time Dad was telling everyone at Christmas dinner that I was going through a phase, I had my first million. I could almost hear him doing the math in his head. But you still borrowed money from Mom and Dad for rent. You drove that beat-up Honda until last year. I never borrowed money from them, Marcus. I asked them to invest in my company. They refused, loudly and repeatedly. The Honda was a choice, not a necessity. Just like this penthouse was a choice. And the private jet, and everything else I kept hidden from all of you. Private jet. His voice cracked. Jesus Sophia. How rich are you exactly? I smiled, remembering all the family dinners where they treated me like the poor relative. The way our younger sister Olivia would ostentatiously pick up the check, making sure everyone knew she was helping out her struggling artist sister. The Forbes article will say $3.8 billion, but that's a conservative estimate. The real number is closer to 5. The sound Marcus made was somewhere between a gasp and a choke. Now, if you'll excuse me, I continued. I have a board meeting to attend. Oh, and Marcus? I'll see you at the family reunion. I'm thinking of making quite an entrance. I hung up before he could respond and pressed the intercom. Sarah, is everything set for the reunion? Yes, Ms. Sullivan. The jet is fueled and ready. The car service is arranged for all family members to be picked up in Rolls-Royces. The venue has been updated to the private island as requested, and the NDAs have been prepared for all staff. Perfect. I picked up the reunion invitation again. For 15 years, I'd played the role they expected, the artistic black sheep who couldn't handle the real world, the daughter who needed constant reminders about financial responsibility, the sister who was pitied and patronized at every family gathering. But not this time. My phone buzzed with a text from my youngest sister Olivia. OMG Soph, please tell me this Forbes thing is a joke. What's going on? I left it unanswered. Olivia, who never failed to mention her 6-figure salary at every family gathering. Olivia, who loved to reminisce about how she'd made it, while her big sister was still finding herself. The intercom buzzed again. Ms. Sullivan, your parents are both on the line. Tell them I'm in a meeting. I checked my watch. And Sarah? Call the helipad. I think I'll take the chopper to the board meeting today. As I gathered my things, my mind wandered back to the day that started it all. The day I decided to hide my success from my family. 15 years earlier. Digital art isn't real art, Sophia. My father's voice boomed across the dinner table. And this NFT nonsense? It's a fad, a scam. No one's going to pay real money for pictures on a computer. I sat there, 22 years old, fresh out of college, trying to explain my vision to my family. The same family that had paid for an Ivy League finance degree they expected me to use at my father's firm. Actually, Dad, I just sold my first collection for. Enough. He cut me off. I don't want to hear about your little hobby. Either you come work for the firm like we planned, or you're on your own. No more support, no more safety net. My mother reached across the table, patting my hand condescendingly. Sweetie, we just want what's best for you. You need stability, a real career. I looked around the table at their faces, my father's disappointment, my mother's concerned frown, Marcus's smug smile, Olivia's barely concealed disdain. That was the moment I made my decision. I wouldn't tell them about the $50,000 sale, or the 3 galleries that wanted to represent me, or the tech companies reaching out about collaborations. You're right, I said, standing up. I need to figure this out on my own. 2 weeks later, I moved into the smallest, cheapest studio apartment I could find in Brooklyn. My family assumed I was struggling, living on my savings, too proud to admit defeat. In reality, I was building an empire. The first year was intense. I worked 18-hour days, developing my artistic style, learning about blockchain technology, building connections in the crypto art world. My first major collection, Digital Dreams in Binary, sold out in hours, bringing in $1.2 million. I took that money and invested it back into the business, hiring developers, creating new platforms for artists, innovating in ways the traditional art world couldn't imagine. But every time I visited home, I drove my old Honda, wore simple clothes, lived the part of the struggling artist. At least let me help with your rent, my mother would offer, while my father shook his head in disappointment. No thanks, Mom. I'm doing fine. And I was, more than fine. By the end of that first year, my net worth had hit $10 million. By year 3, $100 million. But to my family, I was still just Sophia, the dreamer who couldn't face reality. Now, 15 years later, as I stepped into my private helicopter, I thought about how it had all spiraled into something bigger than I'd intended. The little deception had become a massive secret, and in 2 days, everything would change. My phone buzzed again, a message from my father. We need to talk. Now, I smiled and turned off the phone. They'd have to wait for the reunion. After 15 years of hearing about my failures, they were about to learn about my success, and I was going to make sure it was a revelation they'd never forget. The Forbes article dropped at exactly 6:00 a.m. Eastern Time. I was already awake, sipping coffee in my home office, watching the chaos unfold on my multiple screens. Digital art revolutionary. How Sophia Sullivan built a multi-billion-dollar empire in secret. The headline was accompanied by a photo I'd specifically chosen for this moment. Me standing in front of my most successful NFT collection, wearing clothes that cost more than my sister Olivia's monthly salary. The article didn't just reveal my wealth. It detailed every success I'd hidden for 15 years. My phone exploded with notifications. First came the family group chat. Olivia, is this for real? $3.8 billion? Marcus, I tried to warn you all yesterday. Mom, Sophia, please answer your phone. Dad, this must be some kind of mistake. Aunt Patricia, just saw the article. Is our Sophia the Sophia Sullivan? I muted the chat and pulled up my emails. Hundreds of interview requests from major news outlets, investment opportunities, speaking engagements. But one email caught my eye. From my father's business partner, Albert Chen. Sophia, I believe we need to discuss potential synergies between Sullivan Investments and your digital art platforms. Your father may have mentioned some concerns, but I assure you we can be quite flexible. I couldn't help but laugh. 3 years ago, I'd approached a firm about a partnership. Albert had personally shown me the door, saying they didn't deal in internet pictures. My intercom buzzed. Miss Sullivan? Your mother is in the lobby. She's quite insistent. I checked a security feed. There was my mother, Alina Sullivan, still perfectly put together in her designer suit, but with an unfamiliar wildness in her eyes as she argued with the security guard. Let her up, I sighed. It was time to face at least one member of my family. The private elevator opened directly into my penthouse. My mother stepped out, then froze, taking in her surroundings. The vast open space, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, the original Basquiat on the wall that probably cost more than their house. Sophia, she breathed, her voice unsteady. What? What is all this? This is my home, Mom. The real one, not the small apartment I keep for family visits. She walked to the window, her heel clicks echoing on the marble floor. How long have you? How did you? 15 years, I said, pouring her a cup of coffee. Since the day Dad said my digital art would never amount to anything. She turned, her face a mixture of confusion and hurt. But you struggled. We saw it. The tiny apartment, the old car, borrowing money for rent. I never borrowed money. I corrected her. I asked you and Dad to invest in my company. There's a difference. And everything else. The apartment, the car, that was all just theater. Theater? Her voice rose. You've been lying to us for 15 years. No, Mom. I just let you see what you wanted to see. You all were so convinced I was failing that you never bothered to look closer. She sank into one of my Italian leather chairs, looking suddenly old. Does anyone else know? In the family? No one. Well, Marcus found out yesterday when the press release went out. I suppose he tried to warn you. She nodded weakly. He called, but your father was sure it was a mistake. Some other Sophia Sullivan. I walked to my desk and pulled out a file. Here's something that might interest you. The investment opportunity I tried to present to Dad 3 years ago. If he had invested the $1 million I asked for, his share would be worth roughly $100 million today. Her hands trembled as she took the file. He said you wanted a handout, that you were too proud to admit your art wasn't working out. And you believed him, just like you believed him about my struggling artist life. Tell me, Mom, in 15 years, did any of you ever actually come to one of my shows, check out my work, even Google my name? She couldn't meet my eyes. That's what I thought. I walked to the window, looking down at the city I now partially owned. The annual family reunion is in 2 days. I've made some changes to the arrangements. Changes? I bought out the entire resort where it was supposed to be held. Too public. Instead, Everyone will be picked up by my private cars and taken to my jet. We'll be having the reunion on my island. Your island? In the Caribbean. I bought it last year when I closed my first billion-dollar deal. I turned to face her. And Mom? This time, I won't be the one sitting quietly while everyone talks about their successes. This time, I have some things to say. She stood up, smoothing her skirt with shaking hands. Your father. When he sees all this, he'll finally have to admit that his little girl playing with computer pictures built something bigger than his entire family legacy. I smiled. And that's just the beginning. I walked her to the elevator, but before she could step in, I added one last thing. Oh, and Mom, that Bentley you've been dreaming about, but Dad says is too expensive. I bought 3 last month, just because I could. The elevator doors closed on her shocked face. As soon as she was gone, I called my assistant. Sarah, is everything ready for the reunion? Yes, Ms. Sullivan. The island staff is prepared. The documentation packages have been assembled for each family member, showing exactly when they dismissed your investment opportunities and what those shares would be worth today. And the video presentation of your success timeline is ready. Perfect. I picked up my phone and finally replied to the family group chat with a single message. Looking forward to seeing everyone at the reunion. Dress appropriately for a private island. Transportation will be provided. Then I opened my laptop to check the market. The Forbes article had sent my company's stock soaring. Another billion added to my net worth before breakfast. I thought about my father, probably sitting in his office right now, trying to understand how his failing daughter had quietly become one of the richest people in the country. About my sister Olivia, who loved to brag about her 6-figure salary and vacation home in the Hamptons, realizing I could buy her entire life with what I made in interest each day. The reunion was going to be interesting, very interesting indeed. My phone buzzed again. A message from my father. We need to meet. Before the reunion. Family matters should be discussed privately. I typed back. Everything will be discussed at the reunion, Dad. After all, isn't that what family reunions are for? Sharing our successes? Then I called Sarah again. Contact the design team. I want the island's helipad repainted before the reunion. And make sure my name is visible from the air when they land. Already done, Ms. Sullivan. Anything else? I thought about 15 years of condescension, of pity, of being treated like the family failure. Yes, make sure the Forbes article is framed and hanging in every room of the island resort. I want it to be the first thing they see, no matter where they turn. As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the window, successful, powerful, and finally ready to show my family exactly who I'd become while they were busy doubting me. The countdown to the reunion had begun. The day of the Sullivan family reunion dawned clear and bright. I stood on the tarmac of my private airfield, watching as 3 Rolls-Royces approached in formation. My family had arrived. The cars stopped, and the doors opened. First came my father, his usual commanding presence diminished somehow. My mother, still looking shaken from our meeting 2 days ago. Marcus, Olivia, and various aunts, uncles, and cousins followed, all wearing expressions ranging from shock to barely concealed resentment. And there, front and center, sat my gleaming private jet, with Sullivan Digital Empire emblazoned on its side in elegant lettering. Welcome, everyone, I said, my voice carrying across the tarmac. I trust the ride was comfortable. Safia, my father stepped forward, trying to regain his authoritative tone. This is unnecessary. We could have had a perfectly good reunion at the resort. I smiled. The resort was too public, Dad. Besides, I think it's time for some real family bonding. On my island. Your island? Olivia muttered, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. Of course you have an island. The flight was interesting, to say the least. As my family members settled into the luxurious cabin, their eyes darted everywhere, taking in the opulent details, the solid gold fixtures, the rare art pieces, the vintage champagne being served by an immaculately trained staff. Is that a real Picasso? Aunt Patricia whispered, staring at the artwork mounted on a cabin wall. Yes, I replied casually. I bought it last year, along with a few others. My father cleared his throat. Sophia, perhaps we should discuss. We'll discuss everything when we land, Dad. For now, enjoy the flight. The champagne is particularly good. Cost more than your company's quarterly profits. He flinched. Good. 2 hours later, we began our descent. Through the windows, my private island came into view. 300 acres of tropical paradise, with a state-of-the-art resort complex at its center. And there, visible from the air just as I'd planned, was my name in letters large enough to be seen from space. So-P-H-E-A, Sullivan. As we landed, I heard Olivia gasp. The helipad was surrounded by displays showing my most successful NFT collections, each with their sale prices prominently displayed. Millions upon millions of dollars in digital art projected onto massive screens. Welcome to Sullivan Island, I announced as we disembarked. My own little piece of paradise. Little? Marcus choked out. The resort complex sprawled before us, a masterpiece of modern architecture seamlessly blended with natural beauty. Everyone's rooms have been assigned, I continued. You'll find some reading material waiting for you. I suggest you review it before dinner. The reading material was carefully curated for each family member. For my father, documentation of every investment opportunity of mine he dismissed, along with current valuations. For Olivia, a comparison of her annual salary versus what I made in interest each day. For Marcus, details of how his firm had lost millions by refusing to work with my company. I gave them an hour to settle in and digest the information. Then I had them summoned to the main dining room. The room was a masterpiece of design, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. A massive table dominated the space, each place setting probably worth more than most people's cars. And on every wall, that Forbes article, beautifully framed. My family filed in slowly, looking shell-shocked. They changed for dinner, but even their expensive clothes looked somehow inadequate in these surroundings. Please sit. I gestured to the table. We have a lot to discuss. Sophia, my father began as soon as everyone was seated. I think I speak for everyone when I say we're surprised. Surprised? I laughed softly. That's an interesting word choice. Not angry that I deceived you. Not hurt that I hid my success. Just surprised. We didn't know, my mother said quietly. You didn't want to know, I corrected her. Every time I tried to tell you about my work, you changed the subject. Every time I offered investment opportunities, you dismissed them. You were so convinced I was failing that you couldn't see my success, even when it was right in front of you. But the apartment, Olivia interjected. The old car. All those times you let me pay for dinner because you thought I couldn't afford it. I finished for her. Did you enjoy that, Olivia? Playing the successful sister. Making sure everyone knew you were helping out poor, struggling Sophia? She had the grace to look ashamed. Let me show you something, I said, pressing a button. Screens descended from the ceiling, displaying a timeline of my success alongside their dismissive comments over the years. 2008. Digital art isn't real art. Dad, my first collection sells for $50,000. 2010. When are you going to get a real job? Mom, company valuation hits $10 million. 2015. At least I can afford to help my sister out. Olivia, net worth passes $500 million. 2020. We don't invest in internet pictures. Dad's firm company valuation reaches $1 billion. Every doubt, every dismissal, every condescending comment, I said quietly. I remembered them all. And with each one, I built something bigger. Why? My father's voice cracked. Why hide it? Because you needed to learn something. All of you did. Success doesn't look just one way. Innovation doesn't follow your predetermined path. And sometimes, the child you wrote off as a failure might just be the one who succeeds beyond your wildest dreams. I stood up, walking to the window. Do you know what the hardest part was? Not the secrecy. Not pretending to struggle. It was watching you all celebrate mediocrity while dismissing true innovation. Mediocrity, Marcus bristled. Yes, mediocrity. You followed Dad's safe path, Marcus. Got the job he wanted you to get. Made the safe investments. And you, I turned to Olivia. You bragged about your 6-figure salary while I was making that much in minutes. That's enough. My father stood up. You've made your point. We were wrong. Is that what you want to hear? No, Dad. What I want is for you to understand. Really understand. This, I gestured to the luxury around us, isn't about money. It's about vision. The vision you couldn't see because you were too busy clinging to the past. I pressed another button, and new images appeared on the screens. My latest project, a revolutionary platform that would transform how digital art was created, bought, and sold. This launches next month, I said. Conservative estimates put its value at $10 billion. I'm showing you this because for once, I want you to see what I'm building before it happens. No more dismissing it. No more doubting. The room fell silent as they absorbed the implications. Finally, my mother spoke. We're proud of you, Sophia. We should have been proud all along. Thank you, Mom. But I didn't do this for your pride. I did it because it was my dream, my vision. And now, I smiled. It's my empire. So what happens now? Marcus asked. Now we have dinner. As a family. But this time, we'll do it my way. No more pretending. No more hiding. And tomorrow, we'll tour the island, and I'll show you exactly what your daughter, sister, and niece has built while you weren't paying attention. I raised my glass. To the truth. Finally. They raised their glasses, looking somewhat dazed. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of gourmet food, fine wine, and gradually thawing conversations. My family was beginning to see me. Really see me, for the first time in 15 years. As they retired to their rooms that night, I stayed in the dining room, looking out at the moonlit ocean. My assistant Sarah appeared at my side. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. The big reveal. I thought about the looks on their faces, the shock, the realization, the gradual understanding. Yes, I said, but not for the reasons I expected. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about finally being free to be completely myself. And tomorrow, I smiled. Tomorrow, we show them the future. Their safe, predictable world of traditional investments and conventional success is over. It's time for them to understand that the daughter they wrote off as a dreamer wasn't just dreaming. She was building a new world while they weren't looking. Later that night, I found a note that had been slipped under my door. In my father's handwriting. I was wrong, not just about the business, but about everything. You didn't just succeed. You revolutionized an entire industry. I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner. Dad. I placed the note in a frame, right next to my first NFT sale receipt for $50,000. A reminder of where I started and how far I'd come. The next morning, as I watched my family gather for breakfast, their attitudes subtly changed. I realized something important. Success isn't just about proving others wrong. Sometimes it's about proving yourself right. And sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't in the revealing of success, but in the quiet knowledge that you built something extraordinary while everyone else was busy doubting you. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Sullivan Digital Empire announces revolutionary new platform. The future was calling, and this time, my family would watch it unfold in real time. No more hiding, no more pretending, just success on my terms.
About the $3 million, I've made a decision to divide it between my mom and me. This decision came shortly after my father's funeral. Jack, after perusing the inheritance documents without seeking permission, remarked to me, "Kelly, don't be too greedy. Oh, finally, I can quit my job. I have to thank that doddering old man." Doddering old man? Are you talking about my dad? I inadvertently blurted out. Disregarding my confusion, Jack and my mother-in-law enthusiastically discussed plans to buy a new car and go shopping. Faced with this unexpected turn of events, I could no longer contain my emotions. I was on the brink of exploding, burdened with household chores, asked for money, and to top it off, they'd insulted my father. I didn't want to live with Jack and my mother-in-law anymore. Suppressing my anger, I forced a smile and replied, "Sure, feel free to use the money as you and my mother-in-law please. I am Kelly Cohan, a 38-year-old housewife working alongside my husband. My parents were doctors who ran a well-reputed clinic in our hometown. As an only child, I was showered with love. After graduating from the School of Pharmacy, I secured a job at a major pharmaceutical company. Although my parents were disappointed I didn't become a doctor, they respected my decision. 10 years ago, my mother unexpectedly died in an accident, leaving me and my father devastated. During those difficult times, Jack, then my boyfriend, supported me. We met through a mutual friend, and 2 years after my mother's passing, Jack proposed. Jack was an ordinary salaryman in the food and beverage industry. Despite earning significantly more, I believed we could overcome any difficulty and be a happy couple. My father was overjoyed when I told him about our engagement. "I've heard how Jack supported you, Kelly. Thank you so much. Please continue to take care of her," he said. Facing my father, Jack stood straight and promised, "I will make her happy." Standing next to Jack, I was enveloped in feelings of happiness. The following week, we went to Jack's family home to announce our marriage. His mother, with flashy makeup and divorced from Jack's father, evaluated me rudely. "Marriage, huh? You're Jack's choice, are you? Isn't she a bit plain for your choice? And she's older, right? Wouldn't a younger and prettier girl be better for you?" Jack quickly retorted, "Mom, you know M Pharmaceuticals, right? Kelly works there. Her father is a doctor and runs his practice." I expected Jack to praise my character, but instead, he emphasized the financial advantages. Hearing this, his mother's expression changed to one of satisfaction. "Oh, Jack, you should have told me such important things earlier. That changes everything. I happily approve of the marriage. Nice to meet you, Kelly. Thank you." After gaining approval for our marriage from Jack's mother, Jack was overjoyed. However, I couldn't shake off a sense of unease. Despite things going smoothly, and our decision to get married, when we were about to register our marriage, my father, a doctor and real estate investor, gifted me an apartment in a luxury building in New York City. I told Jack, "Dad has given me this apartment as a wedding gift, but it's our new home. Let's live here happily and peacefully together." Jack smiled happily, and thus our married life began. However, after getting married, I realized something unsettling. Jack, who had lived with his parents until then, was almost incapable of doing household chores. He couldn't cook, didn't know how to use the washing machine, and showed no interest in learning. He would leave his garbage scattered around, not bothering to throw it away. While I wanted to diligently share household responsibilities, Jack's careless attitude increased my dissatisfaction. In the first year of marriage, I took on all the household responsibilities despite some complaints, given that we were still in the honeymoon phase. But with the exhaustion from work and struggling to keep up with chores, I reached my limit in our second year. Deciding to have a serious talk with Jack about sharing household duties, I bravely expressed my dissatisfaction. To my dismay, Jack responded without gratitude or reflection, saying, "I'm tired from work too. You're much better at chores than I am, right? It's better if you do them since I'm not good at it." Dismissed just like that, Jack hardly helped with the chores, and I continued to bear the brunt of our household responsibilities. But that wasn't the only problem. After marrying Jack, I discovered his mother also had some peculiar ideas. Jack wasn't very interested in seasonal events, so I decided to send a quality scarf and carnations to his mother for Mother's Day. Despite choosing a nice scarf from a department store, his mother called me sounding displeased. She criticized the scarf, saying it wasn't from a famous brand and was absurd to send such a no-name item. I tried to explain its quality, but she wouldn't listen, insisting she wanted items from a very famous luxury brand. Stunned, I reported this to Jack when he returned home. But instead of empathizing, he said, "What? It's just do as she said." Jack didn't take my side, and from then on, we started giving her cash as she demanded. Moreover, by our 5th year of marriage, she began visiting our home frequently, always finding reasons to ask for money. Jack, without any complaints, would always smile and give money to his mother. Even though I had a job, Jack's income was limited and small, making our daily life just barely manageable. Desperation led me to dip into our savings to cut living expenses. Despite my frustrations, I knew Jack cherished his mother, and she was an important person to me, having supported me during tough times. She's the mother of someone important to me, and with that thought, I endured. Now, in our 8th year of marriage, I continue to handle all the household chores and keep giving money to my mother-in-law. One day during this routine, my father, whom I hadn't seen in a while, unexpectedly called me. The story he shared during our rare meeting was shockingly unexpected. He revealed that he was suffering from terminal cancer, and treatment was no longer possible. Overwhelmed with shock, tears spilled from my eyes. My father gently stroked my head, just as he did when I was a child, saying, "Kelly, this is fate. Let's accept it quietly." I questioned, "Dad, why even you?" Thus, my days became a juggling act of work, household duties, and now visits to my father's hospital. While work allowed some flexibility, managing the household was not easy. When I told Jack I would be caring for my father, he showed no reaction or willingness to help. "Well, it's tough with your father's sudden condition, but please do your best," was the only thing Jack said. He visited my father in the hospital only once. I was so preoccupied with my father's care that I had no time to spare for Jack. If I had time to worry about Jack, I wanted to prioritize my father. One day, as my father lay in his hospital bed, he suddenly asked me, "Kelly, how is your marriage with Jack going?" Caught off guard, I found myself thinking about Jack's attitude at home and his mother's behavior. I couldn't answer properly. Seeing my hesitation, My father seemed to understand and spoke to me. Kelly, you don't have to endure. Think about your happiness. Don't worry. You won't have any hardships after I'm gone. I couldn't hold back my tears and wept, and my father silently and firmly held my hand. 3 months later, the inevitable moment arrived. My father passed away quietly. Engulfed in immense sorrow, I started arranging the funeral. Jack, however, showed no interest in my grief and didn't help with any preparations. Despite this, I was too busy with the funeral arrangements to pay much attention to Jack. Many friends and acquaintances attended my father's funeral, making it a heartfelt farewell. Even the indifferent Jack and his mother attended. The day after the funeral, I received a call from a lawyer about my father's inheritance. I arranged a meeting with the lawyer and listened to the explanation. The information was all new and quite surprising. After deducting taxes like inheritance tax, my father's estate amounted to over $3 million. He had not only earned income as a doctor, but also made real estate investments, leaving behind such a vast fortune, all of it to be inherited by me, his only daughter. Wrapped in surprise and gratitude, yet trembling at the thought of handling such a huge amount of money, I proceeded with the inheritance process. After returning home, I spread out the documents received from the lawyer on my desk. Reading through them, exhaustion overwhelmed me, and I ended up dozing off on the sofa for a short while. When I awoke, I heard the cheerful voices of Jack and his mother from afar. Huh, Jack and mother too. When did you come? As I spoke, Jack approached me with a beaming smile, saying, Yes, Kelly, well done. Huh, what? Confused by his sudden excitement, I noticed the documents in Jack's hand. They were the inheritance papers I had received from the lawyer. Wait, don't just read those without asking. Shocked and angry at Jack for looking through the documents without permission, I raised my voice at him. However, my mother-in-law, unconcerned, happily chimed in, Wow, an inheritance of $3 million. Isn't that amazing? Now we can live comfortably for the rest of our lives. Confused, I couldn't understand why my mother-in-law suddenly said that. Then Jack turned serious and continued, By the way, about this $3 million, I've decided that it will be split between me and my mom. It was right after my father's funeral. Jack, having looked at the documents related to the inheritance I was supposed to receive without permission, said to me, Kelly, don't be too greedy. Oh, now I can finally quit my job. I have to thank that doddering old man. Doddering old man, are you talking about my dad? I accidentally said it out loud. Well, anyway, let's proceed with the inheritance process and get the money into our joint account as soon as possible. Ignoring my confusion over this sudden turn of events, Jack and my mother-in-law were excitedly talking about buying a new car and shopping. At that moment, I couldn't hold back my emotions any longer. I was on the verge of exploding, being burdened with household chores, asked for money, and to top it off, they insulted my father. While holding back my anger, I replied with a forced smile, Sure, use the money you and my mother-in-law, please, as you wish. Hearing this, my mother-in-law, seemingly satisfied, said cheerfully, That's the spirit, Kelly. Quick to agree. Now make sure you work hard and earn money. I don't want our savings to decrease, so work hard. I just nodded and pretended to listen to her selfish words. Afterward, Jack and my mother-in-law began living as if they had lost their minds, consuming money lavishly. Jack quickly quit his job, and my mother-in-law practically moved in with us, staying at our house constantly. They would leave in the morning, returning with luxury brand items they had splurged on. The 3-star restaurant we went to today wasn't as great as I expected. Yes, it was a bit underwhelming for us, the sophisticated ones. They had conversations as if they had become wealthy celebrities while dumping all the housework on me as if I were a maid. Jack seemed to think my father's inheritance would come through immediately. He carelessly withdrew money from our joint account, and my savings of $100,000 dwindled rapidly. When I protested their excessive spending, Jack just laughed it off. Huh, what are you talking about? Isn't $3 million coming soon? then this kind of spending is no big deal. I warned him. I've already stopped it. But Jack completely ignored me. Then, a month later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly left for a trip to Hawaii. I wasn't invited and was left alone at home. After seeing them off, I decided to take action. About a week later, while I was relaxing at home, I heard a loud knock on the door, wondering what was happening. I glanced at the intercom monitor and saw Jack and my mother-in-law, both dressed in aloha shirts, standing at the front door. What do you want?" I asked calmly and coldly. Red with anger, Jack yelled, "What are you even talking about? Why won't the door open?" Seeing Jack and my mother-in-law confused as to why the door wouldn't open, I confidently answered through the intercom. "Well, I changed the locks on the door, so of course it won't open." "What? Why? Let's talk over this calmly at the nearby cafe." "Please go ahead. I'll join you shortly," I suggested. Jack and his mother, after shouting in front of the entrance, seemingly realized it was futile and soon headed to the cafe. Once I confirmed they had left, I made my way to the cafe. Arriving there, I saw Jack and his mother, who had arrived earlier, waiting in a state of fury. "Hey, what's this about? Did you change the locks? Hand over the new keys right now." "There's no need for me to give you the new keys. You both need to leave that house," I calmly told Jack and his mother. Facing a visibly angry Jack, I presented a piece of paper. It was a divorce petition I had already filled out. "Divorce? You're serious about divorcing me?" His mother was equally shocked and bewildered. "Kelly, why has it come to this?" I spoke quietly to the two who were panicking and flustered. "By the way you've been spending lavishly every day, are you sure your finances are okay?" "What money?" "Of course, it's fine," Jack retorted vehemently, spitting as he spoke. "Your father's inheritance is coming, right? There should still be over $50,000 in our joint account. Look, I'll show you right now. Here it is." Saying this, Jack took out his smartphone and opened the banking app to check the account. At that moment, his expression changed abruptly. "What? What's this? Why is the money gone? It was there just the other day." Hearing Jack's words, his mother also hurriedly looked at her phone, her face showing confusion. I revealed the truth to them as they were panicking, not understanding the situation. "Of course it's gone. I'm divorcing you, so I moved that $50,000 to my account as part of the property division." "What? What do you mean?" Jack's face turned to anger for a moment, but then he smirked, as if remembering something. "Fine, I'll divorce you then. Transfer the inheritance you got from your dad right away. After all, property acquired during the marriage is split half and half in a divorce, right?" "Well, you might be misunderstanding something," I replied. "Why didn't you know? The inheritance I received, even though it was during our marriage, doesn't count for property division." There was a moment of silence between us. Then Jack and his mother's expressions changed drastically. Perhaps they truly believed they would receive part of my inheritance. I was just astonished and could only sigh in disbelief. "No, that can't be true. That's impossible." Her face turned red with a mix of denial and anger. "Please check for yourself," I said mockingly. Jack started frantically searching on his smartphone. "It says here, property inherited by one spouse from a parent is considered separate property. Therefore, it's not subject to division and can't be split between the spouses." "What? Seriously?" His mother too looked at the screen in shock. Then Jack approached me, pleading desperately, "Kelly, please don't divorce me. I have no savings and no job. How am I supposed to live if you divorce me?" Faced with Jack's whining, I spoke to him clearly and firmly. "What are you talking about? Take responsibility for your actions. I will never forget how you both treated me. I'm divorcing you. I'll go to court if I have to." Intimidated by my fierce demeanor, which they had never seen before, Jack and his mother shrunk back in fear, whimpering softly. Leaving the two of them dejected, I walked out of the cafe. Later on, Jack and I were able to go through the divorce proceedings without any issues, The $50,000 I had moved from our joint account was recognized as part of the marital property division. Eventually, I managed to get Jack and his mother out of my house. Jack, having already squandered the money from the property division, found himself penniless. Furthermore, he was overwhelmed with bills from the overseas trip and other expenses he had paid for with his credit card, quickly sinking into debt. Jack and his mother had to take on even more debt to make these payments, and they now live in a rundown apartment, working tirelessly every day to pay off their debts. The stark contrast to their former lavish lifestyle has been a huge shock for them. On the other hand, I sold the condo I used to share with Jack. I then moved into the apartment that used to belong to my father. I continue to work as before, but with the inheritance I received from my father, I am living a comfortable life financially. With gratitude to my late father in my heart, I want to start anew and cherish my life ahead. I aim to protect my happiness and spend my days peacefully.
The smell of roasted turkey and underlying tension filled the dining room of our family's Victorian mansion. Snow fell softly outside the tall windows, adding a deceptively peaceful backdrop to what I knew would be anything but a peaceful Christmas dinner. I'm Alexander Bennett, though my family insists on calling me Alex. Their way of diminishing everything about me, right down to my name. At 29, I'm the youngest of 3 children and the only one who chose to stay in the family home after graduating college. Not out of necessity, but strategy. A fact my brother Timothy was about to learn the hard way. The antique grandfather clock struck 6 as our housekeeper Maria brought in the last of the side dishes. She caught my eye briefly, a knowing look passing between us. She'd been here 30 years, long enough to see every family drama unfold, including what was about to happen tonight. Alex, my mother Margaret called from her end of the table, do try to sit up straight. The Hendersons are joining us later for dessert. Her voice carried that familiar note of perpetual disappointment, as if my very posture was letting down the entire Bennett legacy. I adjusted my position slightly, smoothing the napkin across my lap. The Hendersons, of course. Mother's attempt to set me up with their son Bradley. Another suitable match I was supposedly lucky to attract, despite my peculiarities, as she called my career choices. Timothy sat across from me, his wife Diane beside him, both dressed like they'd stepped out of a luxury magazine spread. He'd taken over father's investment firm 3 years ago, a position he'd neither earned nor deserved. But in our family, being the firstborn son trumped little things like competence or ethics. My sister Catherine sat near the end, tapping away at her phone despite mother's repeated glares. She'd blown through 2 trust funds and 3 marriages, yet somehow remained the sensible daughter because at least she tried to settle down. Before we begin, Father announced from the head of the table, "I think it's time we address the elephant in the room." He set down his wine glass with practiced precision. The future of this house. Ah, here it came. I'd been waiting for this moment for exactly 3 years, 2 months, and 15 days. As you know, he continued, this property has been in the Bennett family for 4 generations. With the recent changes in the market, certain decisions need to be made. What he meant was that his investment firm, now Timothy's investment firm, had lost several major clients. The kind of losses that made people whisper at country club gatherings. The kind that forced selling of assets. Timothy leaned forward, unable to contain his smirk. What Father's trying to say, Alex, is that it's time for you to find your own place. We're selling the house. I took a small sip of water, letting the moment stretch. Is that so? Don't act surprised, Catherine chimed in, finally looking up from her phone. You can't have expected to live here forever. Some of us have actual families to think about. By actual families, she meant her latest fiancé and his 3 children from 2 previous marriages. The fiancé who, unknown to her, had already blown through most of her remaining trust fund on a failed yacht charter business in Miami. The market's quite good right now, Timothy continued, his voice taking on that condescending tone he'd perfected since childhood. I have several interested buyers already. High-end developers. They'll probably tear it down, build luxury condos. Mother's hand flew to her throat. Tear it down. But Timothy, darling, this house is just a house, Mother. He cut her off. Progress demands change. Besides, Alex needs to learn to stand on her own 2 feet. You have 1 week to pack your things and leave. I set down my water glass carefully. That's interesting, Tim. Tell me more about these developers. He preened slightly, always eager to show off his business acumen. Prestigious firms. Top dollar. Of course, you wouldn't understand the complexities of such deals. Actually, I said, reaching for my briefcase beside my chair, I understand completely. That's why I had my team research them thoroughly 3 months ago when they first approached me. The room went still. Your team. Father's voice carried the first note of uncertainty I'd heard in years. I smiled, pulling out a thick folder. Yes, my legal team. You see, they were quite concerned about the potential buyer's history of fraudulent dealings, especially given my position as the property owner. Timothy's fork clattered against his plate. What are you talking about? Oh, did I forget to mention? I laid the property deed on the table. I bought this house 2 years ago, through a holding company, of course, when Great Aunt Adelaide's estate was settled. Impossible, Father snapped. The house was tied up in the family trust. It wasn't for sale. The trust you borrowed against repeatedly to cover the firm's losses. I raised an eyebrow. The same trust you defaulted on last spring. The bank was quite happy to sell to a buyer with liquid assets and excellent credit. They particularly appreciated my cash offer. Mother's face had gone pale. Catherine's phone slipped from her fingers. You're lying, Timothy sputtered. This is some kind of joke. Would you like to see the documentation? I opened the folder. I have everything here. The deed, the transfer records, even the receipts for the property taxes I've been paying while letting you all live here rent-free. But your job, Mother whispered. You work in that little tech startup. I laughed softly. That little tech startup went public last year. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer and one of the founding partners. Did none of you ever actually Google my company? We're valued at just over $4 billion. The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, the snow continued to fall, adding another pristine layer to the grounds I legally owned. So, I continued, about that 1-week notice to vacate. I think 24 hours is more appropriate, don't you? After all, progress demands change. Timothy's face had turned an alarming shade of red. You can't do this. We're family. Family? I pulled out another document. Like when you forged my signature to access my trust fund last year. Or when you mortgaged this house to cover your gambling debts. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Diane suddenly became very interested in her napkin. How did you? Father started. No, I finished for him. I know everything. Every loan, every fraud, every secret account. And after tomorrow, so will the SEC. The grandfather clock chimed again, its sound echoing through the stunned silence. But I wasn't finished. There was one more revelation to come. One that would shake the Bennett family to its very core. Now, I said calmly, let's talk about what really happened to Great Aunt Adelaide's original will. The one that disappeared the night before she died. The one Timothy visited her about in the hospital. Timothy's face went from red to white faster than I thought possible, because he knew what was coming next would destroy not just his reputation, but everything he'd schemed and stolen to build. Maria quietly began clearing the untouched dinner plates, her movements precise and careful, like someone trying not to startle a room full of cornered animals. The turkey had gone cold, forgotten in the wake of my revelation. The night before Great Aunt Adelaide died, I continued, pulling out a USB drive. The hospital security cameras recorded something interesting. Would you like to see it, Timothy? Or should I just describe how you threatened our dying aunt to change her will? Stop. Timothy's voice cracked. His perfectly pressed collar suddenly seemed to be choking him. Why stop? Isn't this what family dinners are for? Sharing memories? I connected the drive to my tablet. The footage is quite clear. You entering her room at 11:42 p.m. The nurse's statement confirmed she heard you shouting. Something about deserving the inheritance more than your worthless sisters. Mother's hand trembled as she reached for her wine glass. Timothy, what is she talking about? Nothing, he snapped. She's making this up. Really? I turned the tablet screen toward them, because the video shows you leaving with documents at 12:37 a.m., and exactly 6 hours later, Aunt Adelaide was dead. The original will, mysteriously missing. The new one, hastily signed under suspicious circumstances, left everything to you. Catherine had gone very still. The inheritance, the money you loaned me for my divorce settlement, was stolen. I finished for her. All of it. From the estate, from my trust fund, from this house's equity. Timothy's been running a pyramid scheme for years, using family assets to cover his trading losses. Diane suddenly stood, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I need some air. Sit down, I said firmly. You helped him forge the documents. The SEC has your signatures too. She sank back down, color draining from her face. You've been investigating us. Father's voice carried more bewilderment than anger. Your own family? No, Father. I've been protecting myself. Ever since I found the original will in Timothy's office safe 3 years ago. Timothy's head snapped up. You broke into my office? Actually, your secretary let me in. Remember Linda? The one you fired for incompetence when she threatened to expose your affair with the investor's liaison? I smiled slightly. She's been working for my tech company ever since, keeping excellent records. The sound of Mother's wine glass shattering against the floor made everyone jump. Maria moved to clean it up, but I raised my hand, stopping her. Leave it, I said softly. In fact, Maria, why don't you take the rest of the evening off? With full pay, of course, and don't worry about your job. You'll still have one after they're gone. You can't just. Father started, but I cut him off. Can't just what? Protect loyal employees? Make business decisions about my own property? Don't worry, Father. Maria's contract is ironclad, unlike the documentation Timothy used to embezzle from the family firm. I opened another folder, spreading out bank statements and transaction records across the table like a grotesque Christmas dinner centerpiece. 14 shell companies, I narrated, pointing to highlighted sections. 23 fraudulent accounts. Over $12 million in misappropriated funds. Did you really think nobody would notice? I was protecting our legacy, Timothy shouted, mask finally cracking. The firm was failing. Father's investments were worthless. Timothy. Father's face had gone purple. What have you done? What you taught me to do, Timothy snarled. Appearances matter more than anything, right? Keep up the family name at any cost? Cost? I laughed softly. Let's talk about cost. The cost of sending me to boarding school at 12 because I was difficult. The cost of cutting off my college fund because I chose tech instead of finance. The cost of believing Timothy's lies about my mental instability when I tried to warn you about his schemes. I stood, walking to the window. Outside, the snow had begun falling harder, nature's curtain drawing across the estate I now controlled. But here's the real cost. I turned back to them. Tomorrow morning, the SEC will receive documentation of every fraudulent transaction. The FBI will get proof of Timothy's involvement in Great-Aunt Adelaide's death. And the family firm will be revealed as the house of cards it's become. You'll destroy us, Mother whispered. No, Mother. You did that yourselves. I'm just turning on the lights. Catherine, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. What about me? My trust fund is gone, I confirmed. Timothy emptied it months ago, just like he did with mine, just like he's been doing with the firm's pension fund. By the way, your new fiancé? He knows. He's been helping Timothy hide the money offshore. Catherine's face crumpled. Another expensive engagement ring turned to dust. But I'm not completely heartless, I continued. I've arranged for a small stipend for you, Catherine, enough to live modestly while you finally finish that degree you abandoned. And Mother, there's a comfortable condo waiting in Palm Beach. Your social circle won't be quite as grand, but you won't be destitute. And me? Timothy's voice was barely audible. I smiled, the same cold smile he'd given me countless times over the years. You get exactly what you deserve. A 6S8 cell with a lovely view of the exercise yard. Unless, of course, you'd like to make a deal. Hope flickered across his face. What kind of deal? Tell them the truth, I said simply. All of it. About Adelaide, about the firm, about every scheme and lie. Give them closure before you go away. Timothy looked around the table, at our shell-shocked parents, at his trembling wife, at Catherine's tears. For the first time in his life, he had no moves left to make. It started 6 years ago, he began, voice shaking, when Father made me CEO. But what he revealed next would shake our family's foundation even more than my previous revelations. Because Timothy's crimes went far beyond money. They struck at the very heart of what had torn our family apart decades ago. Timothy's confession spilled out like poison from an old wound, each word making our mother flinch, our father age, and Catherine's tears fall faster. The firm was already failing when Father made me CEO, he continued, staring at his hands. His investments in oil had tanked. The real estate venture in Dubai was a disaster. But we kept up appearances, using Adelaide's trust fund to cover the gaps. My sister's money, Father whispered. You stole from my sister? You taught me well, Father. Timothy's laugh was hollow. Remember when Alex was 12? When she found those irregularities in the family books? I remembered. It was the reason they'd sent me to boarding school. Difficult child, needs discipline, they'd said. In reality, I discovered their first round of financial fraud. But that's not the worst part. Timothy's voice dropped lower. The night Adelaide died, she knew everything. She'd hired a forensic accountant. was planning to expose us all. Mother's face went ash white. Us. All. Tell them, Father. Timothy's eyes had taken on a strange, fevered gleam. Tell them who really started this. Who taught me how to create shell companies, hide assets, manipulate accounts? Father stood so abruptly his chair toppled backward. Be quiet. No. I cut in. Let him finish. Though I already know, I found your old records, Father. The ones hidden in the false bottom of your study drawer. Records going back 30 years. Catherine made a small broken sound. Daddy? It was for the family. Father's voice cracked. Everything I did was to maintain our position, our name, including sending me away. I asked quietly, including believing Timothy when he said I was unstable, turning the whole family against me when I tried to warn you about the firm's collapse. You were too smart, he whispered, too observant, just like Adelaide. The truth hung in the air like smoke, choking us all. So when she threatened to expose you, I continued, Timothy handled it, just like you taught him to handle problems. But he got sloppy, left evidence. I pulled out one final document, a hospital record showing elevated levels of potassium in Adelaide's last blood test. Levels that couldn't be explained by her condition. Did you know about this part, Father? Did you know your son graduated from fraud to murder? Mother ran from the room, the sound of her retching echoing from the hallway. Diane sat frozen, her expensive manicure digging half-moons into her palms. I didn't. Father stumbled back. Timothy, tell me you didn't. The family name. Timothy's voice was eerily calm now. Above all else, protect the family name. Your words, Father. Your lessons. I stood, gathering my documents. The police will be here in approximately 10 minutes. I called them before dinner. You're having us arrested? On Christmas? Catherine's voice rose hysterically. No, Catherine. I'm having Timothy and Father arrested. You and Mother have different consequences. I handed her an envelope. Your new apartment lease, first year paid, along with enrollment papers for the community college nearest your new home. Time to build a real life. She took the envelope with trembling hands. Why? Why help me? Because you were a victim too. Spoiled and enabled, yes, but not criminal. Not like them. The sound of sirens grew in the distance. Timothy made a move toward the door, but I pulled out my phone. The house is surrounded. My security team has been in place all evening. Security team? Diane finally spoke. Did you really think I'd confront financial fraudsters and a murderer without protection? I smiled slightly. I learned something from this family after all. Always have a backup plan. The front door opened and heavy footsteps filled the hallway. 2 police detectives entered the dining room, followed by FBI agents. Mr. Bennett, Mr. Timothy Bennett, the lead detective announced. You're under arrest for financial fraud, embezzlement, and in your case, Timothy, the suspected murder of Adelaide Bennett. As they read them their rights, Mother returned, leaning heavily against the doorframe. I walked to her, holding out another envelope. The condo in Palm Beach, I said softly. It's peaceful. Far from all of this. There's enough money in the account I've set up to live comfortably, if not extravagantly. Why? She whispered. After everything we did to you. Because hate takes too much energy. And I'd rather use mine building something new. As they led Father and Timothy away in handcuffs, I walked to the window, watching the snow blanket their footprints, erasing all trace of their passage from my property. 3 months later, I stood in the same dining room, but everything had changed. The heavy drapes had been replaced with light, modern panels. The oppressive oil paintings of stern Bennett ancestors had given way to local artists' work. The room was filled with light, air, and the sound of children's laughter. I'd converted the mansion into a technology education center for underprivileged youth. The same rooms that had once hosted cold family dinners now held coding classes, robotics workshops, and entrepreneurship seminars. Maria still ran the household, but now as the center's operations manager, with full benefits and a salary that reflected her true worth. Catherine had finished her first semester of community college with straight A's. She was studying social work, determined to help other families avoid our mistakes. Mother was finding peace in Palm Beach, volunteering at a local library, and, surprisingly, showing talent as a children's storyteller. Timothy and father were serving their sentences, 20 years for Timothy, 12 for father. Diane had filed for divorce and turned state's evidence, receiving probation in exchange for her cooperation. The family firm had been dissolved, its legitimate assets used to repay the victims of their fraud. The Bennett name no longer carried weight in financial circles, but I was building a new legacy, one based on innovation, education, and genuine value. I sat in my office, once father's study, reading the latest update from the Education Center's program director. Enrollment had doubled. Our first class of coding students was already receiving job offers. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Got my midterm results. All is again. Thank you for the second chance. I smiled, looking out at the grounds where children now played in the snow, their laughter replacing the echoes of old arguments and older lies. On my desk sat a small photo of Great Aunt Adelaide, her eyes twinkling with the same love of truth and justice that had eventually cost her life, but had also, finally, brought change. The house is still in the family, I told her picture quietly. Just a different kind of family now. A better one. Outside, the snow began to fall again, but this time it felt like renewal rather than burial. Sometimes I'd learned the best revenge isn't destroying what others built. It's building something better in its place. As evening fell, I walked the halls of what was now the Bennett Technology Education Center, listening to the happy chatter of the last students leaving for the day. In the dining room, a group of teenage girls was finishing a coding project, their laptops occupying the same space where that fateful Christmas dinner had shattered my family's illusions. One of them looked up. "Ms. Bennett, can you help us with this algorithm?" I sat down at the table, right where I'd sat 3 months ago, but this time surrounded by hope rather than hostility. "Of course," I said, smiling. "Let's build something amazing. Because that's what real power is. Not the ability to destroy, but the strength to create something new from the ashes of what was lost." And in that, I had finally found my true inheritance. Before heading to the board meeting, I made one crucial stop. The small coffee shop on Oak Street looked exactly as it had 15 years ago. Martha, my grandmother's best friend and former Bennett Industries head of accounting, sat at our usual corner table. "I wondered when you'd visit today," she smiled, pushing a cup of coffee toward me. At 78, her eyes were still sharp as ever. "It's time, isn't it?" I nodded, settling into the chair. "They never knew it was you who taught me how to read corporate financial statements when I was 16. Or that you helped me understand what they were really doing with the company." Martha had been the one who opened my eyes years ago, showing me how my father and Marcus manipulated numbers, hid losses, and played fast and loose with investor funds. She'd been forced into early retirement when she threatened to report their practices. Your grandmother would be proud, Martha said softly. She always said you were the one who truly understood the value of things. I touched the emerald pendant at my neck, my grandmother's last gift before she passed. They're about to learn exactly how much I understood. At precisely 1:55 p.m., I walked into Bennett Industries' main conference room. The tension was palpable. Board members sat rigid in their chairs, papers spread before them. My father stood at the head of the table, trying to project confidence. Marcus slouched in a corner, his usual smirk replaced by barely concealed panic. Mom sat near the door, her designer outfit slightly less perfect than usual. She probably spent the morning discovering just how many of her social connections depended on my anonymous donations. Let's begin, I said clearly, taking a seat directly opposite my father. This meeting was called, Dad started, but I cut him off. This meeting was called because I triggered the shareholder rights clause requiring disclosure of significant ownership changes. I opened my laptop. Shall we look at the numbers? The projector hummed to life, displaying a complex web of shell companies, investment vehicles, and stock transfers. 3 years of careful acquisition, all leading to this moment. As of this morning, I continued, these entities collectively own 47% of Bennett Industries' voting shares. The room erupted in murmurs. Dad gripped the edge of the table. That's impossible, Marcus burst out. The family trust controls majority shares. Correction, I smiled. The family trust controlled majority shares until you used them as collateral for your failed Pacific Shores development project last year. A project that, coincidentally, was purchased at bankruptcy auction by one of my investment groups. Marcus went pale. How did you? No? Unlike you, I actually read the financial reports. All of them, including the ones you tried to bury. I turned to the board members. Would anyone like to see the real numbers from the last 3 years? The ones that don't appear in the official statements. This is blackmail, Dad snapped. No, this is business. I stood up slowly. You taught me that, remember? Everything's negotiable. Everything has a price. What do you want? A board member asked, his voice shaking slightly. Transparency, accountability, and I paused, looking directly at my father, a change in leadership. You can't seriously expect, Marcus started. Actually, I can. Because in addition to my shares, I also hold proxy voting rights for the Miller Group. I let that sink in. The Miller Group, our largest institutional investor, controlled another 15% of shares. Dad sank into his chair. Catherine Miller is a personal friend. Catherine Miller is a businesswoman who recognizes competence over nepotism. I clicked to the next slide. She's also aware of certain irregularities in the company's handling of her investments. Irregularities that I've documented extensively. The room fell silent. Years of mismanagement, hidden losses, and questionable deals, all meticulously recorded and ready to be exposed. Here's what's going to happen, I said calmly. The board will appoint an independent audit committee. Marcus will resign from all operational roles. And Dad? I met his eyes. You'll announce your retirement. Today. Or what? He challenged, but his voice lacked conviction. Or I call the SEC. I'm sure they'd be very interested in the real story behind Wilson Holdings' collapse, and the Thompson development deal, and about a dozen other transactions I've documented. Mom stood up suddenly. Alexandra, please. This is your family. Family? I turned to her. Was it family when you watched Dad crush every initiative I brought to the company? When you stayed silent as Marcus took credit for my work. When you threatened to disown me if I didn't give up my house. She flinched. I learned what family meant from Grandma. And from people like Martha Stevens. You remember her, don't you, Dad? The accountant you forced out because she wouldn't cook the books. Dad's face contorted. Martha? She's been helping you. She taught me to see what was really happening in this company. And now everyone else will see it too. I distributed folders to each board member. These contain my formal proposal for restructuring Bennett Industries. You'll find it addresses the company's actual financial position, not the one shown in public statements. The next 2 hours were a blur of legal discussions, votes, and resolutions. By the end, the transformation was complete. Dad announced his retirement for health reasons. Marcus was removed from all operational roles, and I became executive chairperson of the board with a mandate to reform the company's governance and operations. As the board members filed out, Dad remained seated, staring at the papers in front of him. I never thought, he began, that I could do this. I finished. That's been the problem all along. What happens now? Marcus asked, his arrogance finally shattered. Now, you'll retain your shares, but have no operational control. Dad will have a comfortable retirement, provided he stays out of company business. And Mom, I turned to her. The foundation's funding is secure, but its board will be independently managed. And the mansion, she asked quietly. Keep it. Consider it a reminder that sometimes the child you underestimate the most becomes the one you answer to. I gathered my things, pausing at the door. Oh, and Marcus? I bought the Thompson Development Group this morning. Turns out they were eager to sell once they realized who they were really dealing with. The sun was setting as I drove home, to my house, the one I'd refused to sell, the one that had started this whole confrontation. Martha was waiting on my porch, a bottle of champagne in hand. Your grandmother kept a letter for you, she said, pulling an envelope from her bag. She asked me to give it to you when the time was right. I think today qualifies. The letter was short, written in my grandmother's elegant hand. My dearest Alexandra, I've watched you grow into someone extraordinary, someone who sees beyond the surface of things. The emerald pendant I gave you isn't just jewelry. It's the key to a trust I established years ago, one your father knows nothing about. Martha will explain everything. You've proven you know how to build things. Now show them how to build something better than they ever imagined. All my love, Grandma. I touched the pendant again, understanding finally dawning. Martha smiled. Ready to hear about your grandmother's real legacy? I nodded, opening my door to welcome her in, because sometimes the best revenge isn't about tearing things down. It's about building something new from the ashes of what they never valued. And as for that house they wanted me to sell, it was never about the property. It was about standing my ground, about refusing to be pushed aside one more time. The next morning, a single email went out to all Bennett Industries employees. Change isn't always comfortable, but it's often necessary. Together, we're going to build something extraordinary. And this time, everyone's voice will matter. Regards, Alexander Bennett, Executive Chairperson, Bennett Industries. Sometimes the biggest victories come not from the battles we win, but from the lessons we teach along the way. My family had spent years teaching me that I wasn't enough. In the end, I taught them that I was more than they ever imagined. And that house they wanted so badly, I think I'll keep it. After all, it's got a perfect view of the Bennett Industries Tower. A daily reminder that sometimes the best response to "we don't want you" is to become the person they can't ignore. Martha raised her champagne glass. To your grandmother. To the future, I corrected, smiling. And to remembering that some things aren't for sale. Not houses, not principles, and definitely not self-worth. The sun set over the city skyline, painting the sky in shades of victory. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to reshape the company. But for now, sitting in the house I'd refused to give up, I was exactly where I needed to be. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's showing them exactly who you've become while they were busy underestimating you. And I was just getting started. The crystal wine glasses clinked as my sister Emma raised her hand, drawing everyone's attention like she always did. Big news, everyone. Her perfect smile gleamed as she looked around our parents' mahogany dining table. I just got called for an interview at Sterling Enterprises. My mother gasped in delight, nearly dropping her fork. Sterling Enterprises? The biggest tech company in the city? The very same, Emma preened, tossing her expertly highlighted hair. Senior Marketing Director position. They reached out to me specifically. Of course they had. Everything came easily to Emma. Perfect grades without studying. Dream jobs without trying. A constant stream of success that our parents never tired of celebrating. I sat quietly, pushing my food around my plate, trying to become invisible. But in this family, I was never allowed to fade into the background for long. Not when they needed someone to compare Emma to. Isn't that wonderful? My mother gushed. Now that's a real career path. She turned to me, her smile turning sharp. You should ask Emma for advice, Sarah. Maybe she can help you find something better. Better than what I was doing now, she meant. Better than the consulting work that they all dismissed as glorified freelancing. Better than building my own company from scratch, because apparently being your own boss wasn't as impressive as having one. I'm doing fine, Mom, I said quietly, but Emma was already laughing. Oh, please, you can't even get a real job, she smirked. How long are you going to pretend that your little consulting thing is an actual career? My father set down his wine glass. Emma has a point, Sarah. You're 32. It's time to get serious about your future. I gripped my fork tighter, thinking about the contracts sitting on my desk at home, the acquisition deals I was negotiating, the empire I had built while they were all busy undermining me. My business is doing well, I started to explain, but Emma cut me off. Business? Please. You work from your apartment and barely make enough to pay rent. Meanwhile, I'm about to be a senior director at Sterling. She turned to our parents. Did I mention the salary? Base pay is $250,000 plus bonuses. My mother nearly swooned. My father beamed with pride. I thought about my company's latest quarterly earnings report and had to suppress a laugh. When's the interview? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Monday morning, Emma replied smugly. Not that it matters. The position is practically mine already. The CEO specifically requested to interview me personally. I bet they did, I thought, remembering the stack of resumes on my desk. Among them, Emma's application, forwarded to me by HR with a note. Another entitled candidate with an inflated ego. Your call, boss. Well, good luck, I said, standing up. I should get going. Early meeting tomorrow. Emma snickered. What? Did someone finally agree to buy something from you? Sarah. My mother sighed. When are you going to stop this ridiculous independent phase? Your father could have gotten you a proper position years ago. I thought about the nameplate on my office door. The one that reads Sarah Mitchell, CEO, Sterling Enterprises. The one Emma would see tomorrow morning. You're right, Mom, I said, gathering my things. Maybe it is time for a change. They probably thought I was finally admitting defeat. They had no idea what was coming. As I drove home to my penthouse apartment, not that they knew I could afford one, I thought about how we got here. How their constant dismissal had driven me to build something bigger than they could imagine. It started 10 years ago when I graduated with my MBA. Emma was the star of the family then too, climbing the corporate ladder with her natural talent, while I quietly studied market trends and business strategies. When I told them I was starting my own consulting firm, they laughed. When I landed my first major client, they dismissed it as luck. When I started buying up struggling companies and turning them around, they didn't even notice. 5 years ago, I made my biggest move yet, acquiring Sterling Enterprises through a complex series of shell companies and investment firms. The previous CEO was ready to retire, and I had spent years preparing for this moment. I changed my professional name to Sarah Mitchell, my mother's maiden name, knowing my family never paid enough attention to business news to make the connection. I rebuilt Sterling from the ground up, transforming it into the tech giant it is today. And through it all, my family remained blissfully unaware, too busy praising Emma's minor achievements to notice that their unsuccessful daughter was now one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. My phone buzzed as I pulled into my building's private garage. A text from Emma. You should really come to the Sterling building sometime. See what a real company looks like. I'll give you a tour after I get the job. I smiled, thinking of my corner office on the top floor, the one with the view of the entire city, the one Emma had been dreaming about in her application letter. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. In my apartment, I reviewed Emma's resume one more time. It was impressive on paper. Good education, steady career progression, solid references. But I had done my research. I knew about the projects she had taken credit for, but barely contributed to. The subordinates she had thrown under the bus, the corners she had cut. Emma had always been good at presenting the perfect image. Tomorrow, she would learn that image isn't everything. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. Darling, I know you're probably feeling discouraged seeing Emma's success. Why don't you let your father make some calls? It's not too late to start a proper career. I set the phone down without responding and walked to my home office. The wall was covered in business magazines featuring Sterling's remarkable turnaround. Tech's most innovative CEO, one headline read, Sarah Mitchell, the unseen power player revolutionizing the industry, declared another. My family had spent years telling me I wasn't good enough. Tomorrow, they would learn just how wrong they were. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, typing out an email to HR. Please ensure Ms. Emma Carter's interview is scheduled in my office at 9 a.m. sharp, and make sure she waits in the lobby for at least 30 minutes before being brought up. A small petty detail, perhaps, but after years of enduring her condescension, I thought I deserved a little dramatic flair. I spent the rest of the evening reviewing company reports and finalizing acquisition plans, just like any other Sunday night. But this Sunday felt different. Tomorrow, everything would change. As I got ready for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked nothing like the timid daughter my family still saw me as. My suits were tailored now, my presence commanding. I had grown into my power while they weren't watching. Tomorrow, they would finally see me. And I couldn't wait for the show to begin. Monday morning arrived with a sense of delicious anticipation. I stood in my private elevator, ascending to the top floor of Sterling Enterprises, watching the city wake up through the glass walls. My Armani suit was immaculate, my heels clicking authoritatively on the marble floor as I stepped out. "Good morning, Ms. Mitchell." My executive assistant, Diana, greeted me with a knowing smile. "Your 9 a.m. appointment has arrived early." She's been waiting in the lobby for 20 minutes, insisting that the CEO specifically requested her presence. I checked my watch. 8:45 a.m. Let her wait another 10 minutes. How's she handling it? Diana's eyes twinkled. She's demanded coffee 3 times, name-dropped several executives she claims to know, and told the receptionist that her sister is a nobody who can't even get a proper job. I smiled, setting my briefcase on my desk. Perfect. Has she noticed any of the magazine covers? No, Diana smirked. She's too busy telling everyone within earshot about her marketing expertise to look around. Typical Emma. So focused on promoting herself that she missed the obvious. The lobby walls were lined with press coverage of Sterling's transformation under my leadership. My photo was literally hanging above the reception desk, but Emma would never notice. She never had. Her resume listed some impressive achievements at her current company, Diana noted, arranging folders on my desk. I took the liberty of fact-checking them. And half are exaggerated, a third are outright lies, and the rest were group projects where she took sole credit. I nodded, unsurprised. Just like high school. Remember when she won that science fair? The project you actually built while she was at cheerleading practice. The very same. I sat down behind my desk, adjusting my nameplate slightly. Send her up at 9 a.m. exactly. And Diana? Make sure the security team is recording the lobby and elevator cameras. I want to preserve this moment. At precisely 9 a.m., my office phone buzzed. "Ms. Carter is here for her interview," Diana announced formally. "Send her in." The door opened, and Emma strode in like she already owned the place. She wore an expensive but slightly too flashy suit, her confidence bordering on arrogance. Then she saw me sitting behind the CEO's desk. The color drained from her face. "Sarah?" she stammered, frozen in the doorway. What are you doing here?" "Good morning, Emma," I said pleasantly. "Please take a seat. We have a lot to discuss about your application for the Senior Marketing Director position." She didn't move, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. But I'm supposed to meet with Sarah Mitchell, the CEO. I smiled, gesturing to my nameplate. That would be me. Sarah Mitchell, formerly Sarah Carter. Though I'm not surprised you didn't make the connection. You never did pay attention to anything I did. Emma sank into the chair across from me, her perfect composure cracking. "This is impossible. You're just a consultant. You work from your apartment." Actually, I leaned back in my chair, enjoying this moment. I own this building, and several others. Sterling Enterprises has been my company for the past 5 years. I pulled out her resume. "Now, shall we discuss your application? I have some questions about these achievements you've listed." "You can't be serious," Emma whispered, her voice shaking. "You can't be the CEO. You're nobody." "That's what you all thought, isn't it?" I kept my voice calm, professional. Poor Sarah can't even get a real job. Just a nobody working from her apartment. Tell me, Emma, did you ever once ask what kind of consulting I did? What companies I worked with? Or were you too busy bragging about your own mediocre accomplishments? She flinched. I didn't. No, you didn't. I agreed. None of you did. You were all too convinced of my failure to notice my success, too busy mocking my choices to see where they were leading. I opened her file. "Now, about this claim that you single-handedly increased your department's revenue by 200% last year. That's accurate, she stuttered, but I could see the panic in her eyes. Interesting. I pulled out another document. Because I have here the annual report from your company. The entire marketing department only saw a 30% increase. And according to your former colleagues, that was primarily due to a campaign developed by your junior team. The one you rejected initially but took credit for after it succeeded. Emma's face went from pale to red. You've been investigating me? I investigate all potential senior executives thoroughly. We have very high standards at Sterling. I smiled. Standards that value actual achievement over self-promotion. Just then my phone buzzed. Diana's voice came through the speaker. Ms. Mitchell, your parents are in the lobby, demanding to see you. They're quite insistent. Of course they were. Emma had probably texted them the moment she saw me. Send them up, I said calmly. I think it's time for a family meeting. Emma shifted nervously in her chair. Sarah, look, about last night. About all the things I've said. Save it. I cut her off. I'm not interested in apologies motivated by fear. I spent years listening to you undermine and belittle me. Now you get to sit there and learn exactly who your unsuccessful sister really is. The door burst open. My parents stormed in, their faces a mix of confusion and anger. Sarah, my mother exclaimed. What is the meaning of this? What are you doing in the CEO's office? Hello, Mother, I replied coolly. I was just reviewing Emma's job application. Would you like to join us? We were discussing the importance of honesty in professional achievements. My father's face reddened. Stop this nonsense immediately. You're embarrassing yourself and your sister. I stood up slowly, letting my authority fill the room. No, Dad. For once in your life, you're going to listen to me. All of you are. I pressed a button on my desk, and the wall of windows behind me transformed into a screen, displaying Sterling's financial growth under my leadership. Welcome to my company, the one you've been hearing about at your country club, the one Emma's been desperate to work for, the one that's been making headlines while you were all too busy dismissing me to notice. They stared at the numbers, the achievements, the empire I had built while they weren't watching. Now, I said, sitting back down, let's talk about what really makes someone successful in business. Shall we begin with integrity, or should we start with actual competence? The color drained from Emma's face as she realized this interview was about to become very, very uncomfortable, and we were just getting started. The silence in my office was deafening as my family stared at the financial projections on the screen. 10 years of growth, billions in acquisitions, my photo on the cover of Forbes, Fortune, and Business Weekly. This is all yours, my mother whispered, sinking into one of the leather chairs. Every bit of it, I confirmed, standing to walk around my desk. The consulting business you mocked? That was just the beginning. While Emma was bragging about her mid-level marketing positions, I was buying and transforming struggling companies. While you were lamenting my lack of a real job, I was building an empire. My father, always quick to anger, found his voice first. Why didn't you tell us? Why keep this secret? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tell you? Like I tried to tell you about my first major client, or my first successful company turnaround, or any of my achievements that you dismissed because they didn't fit your narrow definition of success. Emma shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Sarah, if we had known. That's exactly the point. I cut her off. You only care now because of what I've built, not who I am. You're only interested because of the power and money, not because you're proud of what I've accomplished. I pressed another button on my desk, and security footage from last night's dinner appeared on the screen. Emma's mocking voice filled the room. Can't even get a real job. Stop, Emma pleaded, her face flushing. We get it. Do you? I turned to face her directly. Because I've been watching you build your career on exaggerations and stolen credit. I've talked to your former colleagues, your supposed references. I know exactly how you've gotten every position you've ever held. My mother stood up, smoothing her designer dress nervously. Surely we can work something out. We're family, after all. Family? I picked up Emma's resume. Like when Emma took credit for my science project in high school, or when she told her college friends I was a dropout because I started my own business instead of following the corporate path. That kind of family. I was young, Emma protested weakly. We all make mistakes. Yes, we do, I agreed. And now you get to face the consequences of yours. Diana? My assistant entered with a thick folder. The investigation results you requested, Ms. Mitchell. Thank you. I opened the folder and began reading. Falsified achievements, stolen ideas, workplace bullying complaints. I looked up at Emma. Did you really think none of this would come out during our background check? Emma's face went pale. Those accusations were never proven. Because you had Daddy's lawyers shut down every investigation, I finished for her. But Sterling takes corporate integrity very seriously. We thoroughly vet all potential executives. My father stepped forward, his business negotiation face on. Now, Sarah, surely we can discuss this privately, as a family. You lost that right last night, I replied calmly. When you sat there and let Emma mock me. When you suggested I needed your help to find a real job. When you once again made it clear that nothing I did would ever be good enough. I pressed another button on my desk. The office door opened, and Harold Bennett, my chief legal officer, entered. Harold, please explain to my family the consequences of submitting fraudulent information on a Sterling Enterprises job application. Harold adjusted his glasses. Falsifying credentials and experience on an executive-level application is grounds for immediate rejection and potential legal action, especially if previous employers wish to pursue damages for defamation or intellectual property theft. Emma's composure cracked completely. You wouldn't. You can't. Can't what? I asked softly. Protect my company from someone with a proven history of dishonesty? Enforce our ethical standards? Or are you suggesting I should give you special treatment because we're family? Sarah, please, my mother begged. Think about what this would do to our reputation. Like you thought about mine. All those years of snide comments and dismissive attitudes. I shook my head. No, Mother. Emma's application is rejected. Furthermore, I'm forwarding our findings to her current employer. They should know exactly who they're trusting with their corporate image. Emma burst into tears, but they weren't the calculated sobs she usually used to get her way. These were real, the tears of someone finally facing consequences. As for you two, I turned to my parents. I suggest you take a long, hard look at how you've treated both your daughters. One you praised endlessly despite her dishonesty. The other you dismissed despite her integrity and success. My father's face darkened. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Humiliating your family? No, Dad. I'm not enjoying this at all. I'm doing what you should have done years ago, holding people accountable for their actions. I walked to the window, looking out at the city I now partly owned. You know what the worst part is? If any of you had shown even a moment of genuine interest in my work, you would have known about all this. My name, my full name, has been in the business news for years. But you were all too convinced of my failure to notice my success. I turned back to them. Now I have a board meeting to prepare for. Harold will escort you out. Emma, you'll receive official notification of our decision in writing. I suggest you use this as an opportunity for self-reflection. Sarah, my mother tried one last time. We can still be a family. We can work through this. I sat back down at my desk, picking up a report. We'll always be related, Mother. But family? That requires respect, support, and love. None of which you've shown me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run. They left in silence, Emma's tears still falling, my parents' pride in shambles. As the door closed behind them, Diana entered with a cup of coffee. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I took a deep breath, looking at the family photo I kept in my drawer. Not of my parents or Emma, but of my grandfather, the only one who had believed in me from the start. You know what, Diana? I am. For the first time in years, I really am. Over the next few months, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. Emma's current employer launched an investigation into her past achievements, leading to her eventual resignation. My parents stopped appearing in society pages, their social standing diminished by the revelation that they had dismissed their successful daughter while enabling their dishonest one. I focused on my work, continuing to build Sterling into an even stronger company. The business world buzzed with the story once it got out. The secret CEO who had hidden her success from her unsupportive family. It became a symbol of quiet determination triumphing over loud mediocrity. 6 months later, I received a letter from Emma. Not an email or text, but a handwritten letter of apology. For the first time in her life, she had been forced to work her way up from an entry-level position, no family connections to rely on. She wrote that she finally understood the value of genuine achievement. My parents took longer to come around, but eventually, my mother sent a similar letter, acknowledging their failures and asking for a chance to really know me, not as the daughter they had dismissed, but as the woman I had become. I kept both letters in my desk, next to my grandfather's photo, not because I was ready to forgive, but because they reminded me of an important truth. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. 1 year to the day after that fateful interview, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports. Diana entered with the latest business magazine. The cover story, Sterling CEO Sarah Mitchell, The Power of Quiet Success. The article didn't mention my family drama or Emma's failed interview. It focused on what really mattered: the company I had built, the innovations we had created, the changes we had made in the industry. Because in the end, that's what real success looks like. Not bragging at family dinners or inflating achievements, but building something meaningful, something lasting. They had called me worthless at family dinner. Now I was their boss, their superior, their example of what true success looks like. And that was worth more than any revenge could ever be.